going. What's up, everybody? This is Karak with ACG, and I'm here with Johnny. Well, John from Digital Foundry, as well as the Trese Brothers, who have made some of my favorite games, Star Traders, as well as their newer title. It's newer. It's 2023, actually, in early access, Cyber Knights. You guys have heard me talk about their titles in the past, and they were nice enough to join us, talk about video games, talk about creation, being an indie dev, making it on their own, probably some role-playing discussion. We'll talk about some emulator stuff. We'll talk about the news, games of the week that maybe we've been playing, as well as anything else that'll just randomly pop up. Thank you, everybody, for showing up and watching the podcast. You will also hear this on iTunes and Spotify in a bit. If you get a chance, please go and thumbs that up or review it. It definitely helps the channel. Wasn't aware just how much iTunes and Spotify does help. But first of all, Corey, Andrew, thank you very much for showing up, taking the time out of your day, taking the time out of creating a game to actually sit and talk to people who play the games and say they suck, and then you hate them forever. You guys ever felt that way when you got a review? Have you guys ever got a bad review?
Yeah, we've gotten tough reviews before. I think Andrew and I approach bad reviews the same way, is that it's an opportunity to demonstrate that you take feedback seriously.
Oh, gotcha. So you actually take it.
Yeah, I think the best thing you can do, and there's some reviews that are just like, this person either doesn't get the game or doesn't like us, whatever. You can't win every battle. But when you get a review and it's negative because there were problems with the game that the reviewer ran into, I think you can score a lot of points with people if you really just lean into it, write them an email and be like, here's the 25 fixes that we did based on our analysis of your video. And sometimes, like video reviews, we'll get documents of all the timestamps of everything in it that went wrong, and really look at it as a to-do list.
Can you see without the, well, this might be in the weeds, but if you know somebody got and they're playing it and they're having issues, how can they better inform you of their problems? Do you ask them for like their full on logs, or can you see some of that in behind the scenes as a developer? Like, how do you sort of go about bug testing something like that? Like, let's say somebody just has a crash and they inform you, oh, it's an audio crash at this time. How do you go about replicating that?
So, we've been doing this for some years. We've got quite a bit of practice in terms of quality control for the deployed games. We've gotten better at it. I think early on we depended too much on the markets, like too much on Google Play or Steam or whoever telling you that there was something wrong. Mm-hmm. They provide some crash management and quality control stuff. But we found that building our own system right into the game foundationally has allowed us to respond a lot faster. So like if somebody has an audio crash, we get an immediate alert. Like, we know right away. We monitor charts in real time of what's going on with the game. And then if the user runs into something funny, like, I don't know, Andrew, a stock gets attached to the sniper rifle's barrel, and it's got a stock on both ends. I don't know if that ever happens, but if that ever did happen in the game, the user could just press F10, and that sends us their saved game, their log.
Oh, that's nice.
A screenshot of what they saw, all the recent errors that came out of the game. So and then we can just load the game and be like, oh yeah, that's weird. You can attach a stock to the barrel. That's wrong. We fix it. And it also gives us a chance to talk to them. If they're like, here's my Discord ID, we can be like, hey, we fixed your bug, or I don't understand your bug. It makes no sense. Can you give me some more context? So, I think getting that kind of tight integration loop with your users is really important so that they feel heard. And I think that's an important part of early access, is that early access isn't fun if the developers are not listening.
Yeah.
You're like, this game could be great, here's some ideas, and the developers aren't able to respond, or you're not able to get the feedback to them. It can feel like nothing's happening with the game. So I think that,
Hey, BioWare,
helps.
if you're listening, maybe you could fix your guns and Mass Effect Andromeda before the game releases next time. The moment you were talking about guns and stocks, I remember Mass Effect Andromeda playing that for review, and the guns were backwards on one of the characters, and you're like,
oh, no.
Yeah, go ahead, Johnny.
I had a question for you guys. So I think Star Traders was purely a mobile game, and I know it's
Mobile
on
first,
Steam,
now it's Steam.
right?
Yeah.
It was mobile. Was there, because now you did Cyber Knights, which I think is only Steam, right? Only PC. So was there a big shift, like developing for mobile versus developing for PC? Did you guys change your philosophy significantly, or was it pretty much, we got our process and that's it? So Andrew, you're muted, by the way.
Thank you.
There we go.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. We started in mobile in 2011 and made mobile games until about 2015, exclusively mobile games. So the first Star Traders, which we now call Star Traders Classic, was mobile only. And then we started making, we did some games that were like mobile first, and then we ported them to Steam. And then by the time we got to Star Traders Frontiers, the current era game, we released it to PC first, and then like a year and a half later ported it to mobile.
Oh.
So we have been doing we've been in this transition that you're talking about from like roughly 2013 to 2017. We were making the swap, and now we're very heavily PC first, desktop first. Like Steam Deck is now in that kind of ecosystem as part of our firsts, and now mobile is so much harder given the kind of depth of complexity of games we're making. It's just literally
the amount of text.
Squeeze the text, smaller on the thing. So it's always the kind of thing you want to just do way later, like when everything's settled. Right now we're on like a update 108 in early access, and things are not settled. So if you were trying to figure out how to squeeze it and then update it and then squeeze it, it's just overkill. So yeah, we did, and it took us a while. The first games we put out on Steam that came off mobile were super painful for us. There where we got a lot of bad reviews about keyboard support and borderless window issues and like all this crazy stuff. So it did take us quite a long time to kind of make that shift, and it was bumpy. But I think with Cyber Knights we were very thoroughly there. We haven't ever really played the game on mobile yet. We will port it at some point, but it's been exclusively a desktop focus.
Excellent.
It plays nice on the iPad. I'll say that.
Yeah, that's true.
We'll swing back and we'll ask them questions. If you guys in chat have any questions for them, again, Star Traders as well as Cyber Knights is out in early access right now. You've probably heard me talking about them. Is that mine that's clicking? Does anybody hear that audio?
I heard that too.
Yeah, that one hit pretty hard. But moving on from there real quick, I do want to talk about, some of the current stuff that's going on in gaming this week and sort of get it covered as quick as we can so we can move on to more enjoyable stuff, because usually news is negative. So real quickly, I did want to do a little roundtable. Anybody who doesn't want to respond, especially you guys as developers, feel free to respond if you don't want to. It's no big deal, but I did want to talk about Xbox raising the price of Game Pass. I don't know about you guys. I think everybody thought, or everybody knew they were going to raise the price. I was actually slightly surprised, probably because of my other streaming services, that it wasn't at $24.99. I'm not saying I'm not unhappy it raised, because that's life. It does suck that it's more money. But I think I'm so accustomed to everything at this $24.99. Remember when you were a kid, it was $9.99? It was like, and then the price, and they figured out $24.99. So when I saw that it was a couple bucks, I know that it's different for different nations and different currencies. But I think everybody expected it. Was anybody surprised? Any thoughts on it? I mean, does it change? I don't know. Does it change the landscape of gaming and subscriptions for anybody here? Feel free. We'll just go with John from DF first. As you guys who cover a bunch of stuff for games and how you get them and all that, is this surprising to you in any way?
It's not surprising at all. It doesn't really affect me personally in any like sort of negative way, but like when you consider how much they've been investing in these developers, right? Something's got to give at some point. And it only makes sense, especially with the Activision stuff, that they would need to raise the price. And I think they've basically done that. And I believe they also they eliminated they pulled back one of the tiers and got rid of the day one, the big day one releases, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, have we ever seen a subscription service that doesn't have to raise prices to keep up with, that's just the reality of things, right? This stuff is not free. So when you buy into a service like this, you kind of expect it to come at some point. I think they've actually held the price pretty steady for a long time. But given the amount of investments they've poured into it recently, and given this does feel like kind of a new era. Like this, I feel like the last 6 months have just been like a new era for Xbox, where they're just like, they've kind of given up the traditional model to some degree, and they're just said, all right, we're taking a new approach. So you're seeing all the things from lots of multi-platform releases coming up. You're seeing that talk this week about the Fire Stick, where they're putting out advertisements saying, hey, play Xbox without an Xbox, right? It feels like they're really focusing now on Xbox is now this service. It's these games. It's no longer about owning the box. And I think in that sense, it makes a lot of sense for them, because they are, factually speaking, trailing Nintendo and Sony in terms of unit sales. It just wasn't working for them, especially in countries like Europe, Asia, places like that, not doing that well. So this is a way to sort of expand Xbox and take advantage of, I would say, the PC platform and other avenues that Nintendo and Sony are not in. So they're kind of playing in a different space now. Like, yes, Sony does have titles on Steam and whatnot, but Windows is ubiquitous. That's Microsoft's product, right? So it makes sense to really, they just want people playing their stuff. And Game Pass is sort of like the entry point to that. But if the Game Pass numbers aren't necessarily where they wanted them to be, which I think we've heard kind of rumors that it hadn't grown at the rate that they had wanted, when you couple that with all those aforementioned investments, price is going to go up. But like you said, it didn't perhaps go up as much as you might have expected necessarily. Yeah, which is also interesting when you consider just the cost and difficulty of producing a lot of the games on there. I mean, there's a very large range of budgets, right? But the upper tier of games on Game Pass are still, that kind of stuff eats up more money and time than films, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a gigantic investment. And I think a lot of people still wonder, like, how is a service like Game Pass really viable long term? So maybe this is just part of making it more viable, these types of price increases. I don't know. It's difficult to say without, I'm not really part of any of this sort of deciding the price level on services like this, of course. So I don't have that much insight into it, but it just makes sense given where game development is at these days. If you want to offer premium, expensive games on your service, you gotta price it accordingly.
Yeah. Johnny? Any comments on it?
I think the only thing I was confused about is the day one distinction, right? For the tiers. I believe the PC Game Pass and the Ultimate Game Pass versions still give you access to day one for everything. It's only the core, version, which is like a cheaper tier, right? That they introduced. So I'm fine with that. That would have been an issue for me if I have the PC Game Pass, but now I'm forced to pay the Ultimate to get, day one games. That I think that would have been more attrition. But £2 in the UK difference, price increase, I think is reasonable. The service has, I think, gone up in value, right? They obviously keep adding more and more games over time, and we've had some pretty big ones even just recently. So yeah, I think it's long overdue.
Andrew, what about you as a developer? Are you guys, I mean, not to get into the nitty gritty, but have you ever, or maybe you just talked to another developer who's thought about this, do you have any general thoughts about Game Pass, about the cost increase, anything like that?
Well, for us, Cyberknights will be the first game that we try to port to a console. So it has full-blown controller support and is ready to go. So when we're done with our sort of Steam loop here, early access,
smart,
all, things settle, much like a mobile port, we will try to go talk to Microsoft and Sony and see if we can get on consoles. Should be able to. We don't see any particular reason we won't. So we'll have to learn more about it at that time. I admit I don't have a console. I'm fully, I don't own an Xbox. So to me, this all is so interesting. As John said, it feels like there's just this like window here the next couple of years where they have to figure out if this is viable. They've been trying to do this for a while, and I don't know any of the numbers or the sizes really, but does this actually work? And if you lose the hardware behind it, if that falls out of the picture, does that tip the whole thing over? Or can you just sort of start to migrate these people to PCs? I don't know. It's interesting to watch. I don't know. That's my take.
Corey, what about you?
As a developer,
your audio is completely
underwater.
Muted, or it's like underwater.
Yeah, I can hear him barely. Yeah.
Any better?
There it is.
Yes,
Sorry.
you're back.
I think as a developer, things like Game Pass make it harder to connect with your customers. You become like one of this collection of games, and you're not necessarily something that the customer feels a strong connection to, which I think is something that Andrew and I assign a lot of value to, that relationship with the player. But I do think it's really good for developers who find that their games perform well. And not all games perform well on a game system like Game Pass, but they've paid out a lot of money, hundreds of millions of dollars, to big and small studios. So I think, I personally think it's a good thing for the industry. It competes with some of the big market owners, and it drives success for developers of a variety of sizes. So I think all in all, it's a win. And I assume some of that money that's going to be generated by the increased subscription fees will be passed on to the developers. So yeah, I see that as a positive.
Yeah, I like the idea of you guys going to consoles just because I like your games, so I'll play them pretty much on anything. I do want to add a couple things that I think are pretty intriguing when it comes to this. First, I would say this is one of the first services where I feel like they haven't... See, I've had Amazon Prime since day one. I've had Netflix, and I always feel like they're cutting stuff. This is probably the only subscription that I look at and go, that is not exactly how I feel about this particular subscription so far. Also, longevity is important, but I also, as a gamer, don't really fucking care. At some point, the company will do their thing, and their longevity, we've now talked about it for 7 or 8 years. I can't remember how long it's been going. You hear somebody say it can't last. And I'm like, it's lasted longer than some of my friendships. Lasted longer than many of my friends' marriages. It's lasted long enough. At this point, it is just a service, and it's out there, and it's doing something. If it goes away tomorrow, just like normal chaos theory in life, things fall apart. I'll expect that. But I'm not too nervous about what it does internally with Microsoft. I don't really care. That's their job is to make games for me. My job is to play them, and I don't really care too much about what's going on internally with them. Other than I hope they're able to continue this because I think it's a good deal for people. Also, I think it doesn't come to anybody's surprise that they go with a streaming kind of, service. They, Phil Spencer loves to put shit on his back little dresser drawer. He had his little streaming Keystone box back there that when they were thinking about doing that. And we talked about it on the podcast almost 3 years ago when we were trying to decide how they were going to do this. And one of the things I've always pushed for is an OEM system where they say, why are we the ones making the hardware and supporting it year after year after year? If we can have a streaming service, and I'm just talking about streaming, I'm not talking about Xbox, saying, hey, Fire Stick, you handle it. Roku, you handle it. Google, whatever Google's got, you guys handle it. iPhone, you guys handle it. You guys handle the hardware, and we'll handle the app. And we'll take care of that. What I want Microsoft to fix, as somebody who plays GeForce Now a lot, they need to fix the entire backbone of how they handle their console games, especially latency. They're locked at about 15 per second when it comes to their bit rate as well. It's terrible, especially if you play.
It's so bad.
It's
so bad.
I had an argument with somebody very well known on Twitter one day when they were like, it looks damn near real on Xbox. And I'm like, I don't know what you think real is, but unless you're watching through glaucoma, it does not look real. It is in bad shape. And I like streaming services, as in I want people to have those options. That is bad currently. It is bad.
I famously don't like streaming services, but I've publicly admitted that GeForce Now is extremely impressive. It's bordering on feeling like it's running natively in front of you, which is insane. Like, the accomplishment there is really, really, really impressive. But the Xbox solution is like, it feels like 10 years ago, where you're like looking at a low bit rate low quality stream. It's not completely smooth, and it's completely mushy, ugly, and bad. It's not a good option right now, and that's on them to fix that. If they're serious about it, then they need to look at what NVIDIA is doing, I think, and be like, hey, can we achieve this?
Well,
because right now they're not even close.
That was what I was going to add. You know, Microsoft is putting Game Pass games on NVIDIA, and we talked about it in our last podcast, as well as a big Discord podcast we had yesterday with a bunch of people in chat. And I was like, listen, man, at some point, maybe Microsoft just looks at NVIDIA and says, hey, guys, let's just do a deal here. Let's get this off of the Xbox systems, whatever they're running. We were informed that the hardware technically are Xbox systems that they're running from. So I don't know if that means there's a bitrate issue with CPU load and that they can't raise it above 15. But I don't think so. I don't think so either, but I don't know how much they can raise it because the portal is also locked at 15. And that also looks bad. So there's something going on their side. Both of those companies need to fix their cloud/streaming services if they're going to market them as a big deal.
Right.
Yeah.
But then again, I might argue that the people that are buying a streaming stick to play Xbox games probably don't give a shit anyway, just about quality. Right? Like if you actually care about video quality, you probably bought an actual box. If you're somebody, I mean, I'm sure you've had experiences talking to people that might fit into that market. They're not the type of people that actually notice this stuff or care. They just want to play the game. And there's absolutely, I'm not saying that's bad. There's nothing wrong with that. If they see that and that makes them happy and they're having fun, that's ultimately all that matters, right? Like
I would push
what
back.
We're saying is the solution's bad for us, but it's probably good enough for a subset of people.
It's possible, but I would push back and say good enough is not what has worked for Microsoft. They need to make it so that it is at a level to where I
100% agree.
I want to hear John on Digital Foundry say, oh my God, this is good now. Because that's the kind of person that people are going to listen and go, wait, John, anti-John. By the way, I was anti-streaming too. For years, I was like, nah, I'm not going to stream from. And then I've beat so many games using GeForce. It's now, it's by far higher, unless I'm reviewing, a great deal higher than my native amount of gaming. It's beyond belief.
Did I tell you about the thing that NVIDIA did with us at Gamescom last year, where they were trying to show off their GeForce Now stuff to us? They had two PCs on the desk, each with the same monitor, and they said, all right, they put me and Alex in front of each one, and then they said swap to the other one, and like, which one's the streaming? And I remember they had this whole thing set up ready to go, and I sat down, and within like 2 seconds, like, oh, this is the streaming one. And they're like, oh, crap. Like, you figured it out too fast. Yeah. And then they removed the side of the case, and there was just a little streaming box inside. It was not actually a PC. So even when it's like super high quality, like GeForce Now,
absolutely,
you can still tell a difference, but it's getting so close to native that I have to admit it's impressive. But what I like about GeForce Now is that it kind of, that type of service is additive, and then it's like you can access games that you own in your Steam library on this service, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
John, do you think if you didn't have the side by side, like the experiment with the Coke and Pepsi, because
I've never not been able to tell it's a GeForce game.
It's very easy to tell. It's just a matter of
macro blocking.
There's a threshold though where it crosses a threshold where it's like it looks so good that it's like, all right, this is acceptable enough, right?
Right.
And you can put up with that. But you can still tell, but it's quite good. I have to give him credit there.
Yeah, man, we live in amazing times because, I mean, when I watch Netflix and they say it's 4K and I look at it and I can tell that it's like 1 frame 4K, end frame 4K, in the middle's a B frame and about 50 fake ones. I'm like, all right, you can see a lot of DivX. Look at that. That's my old codec I used to use. You see the macro blocks and all that, and you're like, ugh. But it still looks great. It still looks great. What I think is that if Microsoft wants to continue to push forward as a top-tier producer of titles and say, hey, listen, here's a Call of Duty, I'm sorry, your biggest type of games you're selling from your newest purchase are not playable on the cloud in any way that is feasible to a normal gamer who likes a Call of Duty already. You're not selling to the current, and you're not selling to the new.
But again, though, until this Fire Stick, but even then, I feel like the streaming, this is what I'm okay with on streaming. I did not like Stadia because streaming was the product, where with what, both NVIDIA, Microsoft, Sony, they're all doing, this is like an additive thing where it's like, you already have this stuff, you already have these consoles, but if you want to play it on the go, if you want to play it on like a small laptop, here's the option to do so. And I do have a desire for those services to improve for that reason. It would be great if the Xbox Stream were closer to what NVIDIA is doing, because then there are absolutely use cases. I mean, I could see myself being at I was going to say hotel room, but hotel Wi-Fi
not
is
with
usually
hotel
so
Wi-Fi.
bad that it's probably not going to work. So
I get what you're saying.
Conceivably, though, that could be useful. But it's still beyond the streaming, though. I kind of wanted to ask you what you thought about. I've been thinking about the polar opposite nature of two of the industry titans. So basically, Microsoft versus Nintendo. Microsoft has gone all in on these services, right? They're like, you pay this flat fee, you get all these games. Games are always on sale. We're giving you games left and right. Here's all this stuff. Nintendo's like, everything's $50 or up. It's all full price. We'll maybe give you a sale once in like 4 years. Take it or leave it.
But it'll be 10%.
But
or 15%.
Exactly. But you look at their success. Switch is the most successful console in Nintendo history. They are selling so many units of hardware. Their games are successful. They've kept the actual budgets of their games kind of in check to the point where like everything seems to be succeeding. Like they're doing extremely well. And I think the approach is so interesting to look at, because theoretically what Xbox is doing feels more quote unquote consumer friendly, but it's also kind of training people almost to like devalue games to some degree, similar to what happened in the mobile space, where we used to have a lot of paid mobile games. And I feel like mobile game quality was actually largely, in some ways, better back then. Like there are some amazing free-to-play stuff, actually, I have to admit, but I think it had not a very positive effect on it. And I get this, I've had this lingering fear about the console space, where you look at, you see this reaction, like people are like, oh, it's not on Game Pass, I'm not going to buy it. Not on Game Pass, won't get it. And I'm worried about how that impacts the psychology of actually investing in games at all. And if you're not at like super low price on a service or free to play, there's a subset of people that are becoming increasingly less likely to want to give you a chance. Nintendo never, ever even opened that door. They're like, no, this is what we're doing, and this is our model. And they've stuck to it, and it's worked. So that means that people are still willing to pay a good amount of money for these experiences. And for my own buying habits, I've also found that if a game comes out on Nintendo and I want it and I want to own it, I'm just like, well, I may as well just get it day one, because it ain't going to go on sale anytime soon, right? And that it's kind of almost perverse that it works that way, because I'm like, well, they're not going to give you a deal, so you may as well just spend the money now, right? Where Microsoft is kind of doing better for like people's wallets, but in terms of what it does on the psychology side, I don't know. It's a topic I've been thinking about a lot, and I'm curious what you guys think about that.
I do want to point out that like the positive. So I agree, as somebody who reviews games based on cost. I know not everybody agrees with that, but I buy the game. So to me, I am telling you, I spent $60 for this. Even if a dev gives me a code, I still buy the game, because I do feel that there's a psychology with buying something. There absolutely is. That's why when I review a Game Pass game, I do it a different review style. It's like pass, wait, download it now, what have you. But I will say this: Nintendo is in the fucking Stone Age. Their version of friend codes and not even the ability to do talking. It's like 2 styrofoam cups with some yarn between. They are so ancient in how they did stuff that it's also surprising that last year they platinumed last year themselves. Last year's games from Nintendo were unbelievable. I don't even understand how every game I played from Nintendo was phenomenal. They were also all full cost, and they are also that person who is really high class, who is finicky, but maybe a lover, versus Microsoft, which I'm not going to get into what I think. There's these two types of people that you meet. The persnickety, difficult person that you love to be around, because when you do have a good time, it's like, oh my God, but it's going to cost me an arm and a leg. And then you look over here and you're like, occasionally it costs me an arm and a leg, but there's a lot of cool fun to be had. And they're also pushing forward technology Xbox Live started everything, this kind of stuff, and the chat and the groups, which I absolutely love. And Nintendo, I don't think Nintendo even knows what online is. I'm pretty sure those guys are still puffing on a bong somewhere and trying to figure out like what Xbox, what groups are. And yet they do so well. My question is more along the lines of, if they did do more of the technical advancements like a Switch 2, would that even help them? Or are they selling to a group that doesn't care? I don't know if the consumer base overlaps as much as maybe we're giving them credit for.
Yeah.
Like it
feels to some degree, probably, but maybe not as huge as we think. You're right.
Yeah, maybe not as huge as we. I mean, the people I
That's
talk
a good
to,
point.
They're playing Zelda, and I'm all, and the way they talk about it, I loved Zelda, but I'm all, not 100% sure this is what you think it is, but the way they talk about it, it's almost like a friend that you have that you overlook all their issues because you absolutely cherish whatever it is. And I cherish Nintendo's offerings on the software side, but their hardware, I'm sorry. Like, they're fucking
No, dude, the
so
Switch is
behind the
awesome
scenes.
though. The Switch is awesome. Like when you think about it as like
9 years ago.
It's still awesome. I maintain. When you look at the best stuff on there, when you look at games designed well for it, you're still getting super smooth 60 frames per second experiences and great art design. The problem is more like a lot of developers have moved on to more powerful platforms, and trying to deal with the Switch at this point from that perspective, it's a huge pain in the butt.
Expensive.
So it's for Nintendo itself, I think the Switch is ample, but for most other developers, yeah, it's extremely outdated.
But John, we see even for some flagship developing houses like I forget the name, the guys that do Pokemon, they struggle, man.
Oh yeah,
like
well,
their
to be
games
fair
are
though, they have
rough.
struggled. They have always struggled, right? Like
Those
you
guys
go back
that
to
struggle
DS,
with the
3DS, like
supercomputer,
dude,
they'd still get 12 FPS. Like I don't know.
their games are technically inept.
They're rough.
They're
rough.
They are inept.
They're real messy.
They're a disaster.
But they're also on that really brutal schedule, right? Like they gotta go with all the marketing, the toys, the cards, everything else. Like they have to hit this deadline every single time, almost like a Madden game, where it's like you got to get it out every time, on time, all the time. You only have this amount of time. You can't have any extra. You don't have R&D time. You got to get all these Pokemon in there. Sounds like a nightmare to work on that game.
Corey and Andrew, ever Switch ever popped up in your brains?
Yeah. We've actually attempted some Switch ports. We can't say like a lot because there's developer agreements, but we have tried and failed to take our games to Nintendo Switch. Partially, just the technology is a little outdated. Before Cyberknights, we used a custom engine that Andrew and I made. So there was really no one that had any idea how to make it run on Switch, and Andrew and I were like making other games, and it just became sort of a bridge too far. I really like it. I think Star Traders would have done great on the Switch.
So do
honestly, I think it would have been a fantastic pick up and put down type game with a Switch. The frames, you can get 200 frames on a decent PC, so it would have run well. It's just unfortunately we were locked into that engine. I really hope we can get Cyberknights to run on Switch. I think if we can get over the performance hurdle, I think Cyberknights would fit into the Switch as well. If we performance hurdle in the fonts.
I mean, hopefully within a year we'll have the next generation Switch on the market, right? So maybe that's a better target for you guys.
And I think proving out on the Steam Deck sort of gives us a halfway there. Like it's sort of a step down. We can, you've got to have controller support, you got to have touch support, you got to have a lot of different hardware integrations. One thing that Nintendo does a good job is once you are in as a developer, they give you really good software. Like their dev package thing is very nice. It's very professionally put together and works really well with whatever engine you're using if it's supported. And they have a very nice guide on how to do a lot of the porting if your engine isn't supported. We never got it all to work, but they're very sharp.
That's cool.
That actually explains why we see so many indie games on the Switch. Well, maybe partially explains because there's such a large library of third-party indie games on Switch.
Yep. Yeah. Like if you're using Unity or Unreal, if you can get Nintendo to approve you as a developer, there's like a thing you download and it does almost everything for you.
To like meet you halfway and beyond, like
You know, like convert it to this and then a bunch of Nintendo provided tools that work with their dev kits and everything all step into action. So it's nice. I think that it does explain a lot, like you said, of why indies end up there so commonly.
You know what? We give Nintendo some shit sometimes, Karak, for like their hardware or like some weird decisions with the online playing and like some of the connectivity or whatever. But, that's praiseworthy. That's cool to hear that they make it really easy.
Reading these super chats real quick, and then Andrew, I want to also see what you think, if you have anything to add about Switch. I just want to read these because these were early. Love the games. Just bought Star Traders RPG Elite. Let's go, boys. Thank you very much. Soul Sleeper, $24 super chat. On to an amazing weekend, Jensen. Was not reading diligently and thought Andrew Tate had joined today's session. No,
yes, the good old,
good old Andrew. Yeah, he'd be on here. Sure.
All right.
Yeah.
Spec Labs gifted 20 ACG memberships. Thank you very much, Spec. I appreciate it, and I hope you're doing well. I want to sit down in the chat in the Discord one of these days and discuss some business with you. I also want to say thanks to all the super long Discord fans. We got some questions from people who were here day one 7 years ago, but we'll get to those in a second. Andrew, do you have any thoughts on Switch as well to add?
We did try to port it because of we had an open source engine that we branched like 10 plus years ago, became very much our own thing. It was a tough mountain to die on. That is what I would say. We have loved, like in our history, we're like doing this for 13 years. We have joined way too many services that died. Or like tried to get onto a market and failed. That's all. So we're trying to learn from that a bit. But Switch was like one of the last ones. We joined a number of early subscription services, like especially in mobile, where we got on and somebody like we integrate their SDK and get our thing on there and like get the first paycheck from them and be like, oh yeah, $40. Okay. And then the service shut down. We'd be like, wait, what? No, come on. So this is painful, and then I think we spent almost 2 years talking to different porting houses and trying to get someone who could help us figure out the technical stuff that we couldn't bridge, and the price tag was always insane when it came down to it. So it was a tough mountain to die on. We are super excited that Star Traders was added to GeForce Now at the end of June, and Cyber Knights is coming at the end of July. So that was easy. We checked the checkbox and sent a couple emails, and we're on.
Oh, really? And that's awesome. That's because that's the thing, man.
That's awesome.
And I get to talk to. Luckily, I do have some contacts, and I get to hear sort of the difficulties, let's say, from Ubisoft and translating between services and trying to move from one console to the other. So the idea and the difficulties they have, including Switch, to get some of their titles on Switch, because that is ridiculous sometimes. Even I know there's been some issues on the Switch with those titles, but it's cool to hear somebody just say they pressed, they pressed a couple emails and they pressed a button, because the easier way you guys can get into it and get something up and running, I don't know what it is, but especially when you look at how gamers assume developers are doing stuff, they assume it's that easy all the time. I'm not saying it was super easy. You sort of combined it, but they'll be like, "Why don't you just?" I hear that all the time. Hey, it's on the Xbox Series X. Why don't you just run it on the Apple IIe? And I'm like, "The fuck are you talking about? Like, what do you even mean? That's not possible. You don't even understand how things are going, and the ease in which they assume you guys are able to do stuff. I'm actually really excited you guys did have somewhat of an easy time once, so that you can just get it up and running, especially on GeForce, where it's just there. If you own it, you're able to play it. I do want to talk a little bit about Star Traders real quick. So I don't know how you guys found the channel. I don't know if it was because somebody had told you I was talking about this game, but let me explain the reason why I like this game so much. So this was right when I got my Android device. I call it an Android device because I don't allow it to take phone calls in. I don't have a cell phone. I don't want people allowed to contact me. But I do play games on it occasionally. So I was using it, walking around, going to events, trading information with people. And I was playing Game Dev Story, I think. And I was like, wow, the mobile can deliver an occasional awesome game. And I'm a space dune not Cyberpunk, but like just a space game fan, and I saw your guys' game, and I don't remember what it was on the Android. I don't remember if it was on Google Play at the time for free. I'm pretty sure I bought it, maybe $5.99. I don't know what you guys sell it on. What are you guys selling it on Google for right now?
$7.
$7.
Star Traders Frontiers. Yeah.
Yeah. So I played the other one first, 4X.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
By the way,
okay.
That was 5. Yeah.
Just tell you guys, terrible name. Terrible name.
Yeah. Thank you.
So I get this
Terrible
game.
name.
Terrible name. I hate game names right now. And I load this game up and I'm playing it. And this is one of the first times ever where I remember my wife came in and she's like, "Are you ready?" And I said, "Ready for what?" And she said, "We have this event to go to." And I'm like, "No, that's in 5 hours." And she said, "It's been 5 hours." And as somebody who doesn't like small devices, even when I play, I like my Legion because it's a bigger screen. I was stunned at the amount of time and your guys' ability to deliver a title, that one, and then even more so the sequel. The ability for you guys to deliver a game where I jumped in and something happened and I was like, wait, what? There's something else connect. Oh, this other thing? There's State of Decay. A couple other games have made me feel this way, where I'm always trying to put pieces together and going, is this a main story thing? Can I really do this? Or are they pretending I can do that? Like, is it just sort of that facade, which I'm fine with. Lie to me, lie a little, tell a lot. I'm fine with that. But your guys' game was not lying. And then I jumped into the new one. And the side battle, the sort of card-like way in which you guys present things, as well as Slay the Spire, I guess. There's all these influences I see in that game. I got to say, man, your guys' ability to deliver a title that jumps around in some of its way it does stuff, a lot of text. It's, so somebody, if you want to read, this is the game for you, because there's a lot of text and a lot of questing. But I remember doing something for somebody, and I was fighting to get the ability to do their quests, and I thought it was going to be something pretty lackluster. And then I realized you could blockade planets, and it was just this constant sense of discovery that your guys' game, other than a couple others, has made me talk about it. You can tell I'm a fan when I talk about it a lot in a podcast. I don't care if people are listening the next week, and I'm still talking about it. People are like, dude, move on. I talked about your game for like a year. And it's because of that organic feel that I had in your titles, jumping one to the next to the next. However, when it comes to those games, I jumped into them when they were done. And you guys have heard me, I'm sure. I do have an issue with early access. And I saw that when I was talking back and forth on Twitter with your contact, we were talking, they were explaining how you guys do early access, which I think is not rare, but is definitely a step above most. So a lot of companies will have a Discord, but you don't see the people in there. And that's something, like for me, I have a Discord and I'm in there all the time, probably to people's ultimate sadness, but I am. You guys are in there all the time. I haven't jumped into this one. And the reason why is because early access to me normally leaves such a bad taste in my mouth. Because while I can affect the game, I'm nervous that I'll get burned out by the game. That by the time it's complete, I will be unfortunately done with it and I won't get to see the completeness. So what I want to know from you guys is, you guys did this, you kickstarted this one as well, right? You kickstarted Cyber Knights as well.
Cyber Knights, yep.
Yes, we did.
So how do you guys, I know you guys have done a ton of updates. People are really happy. The reviews are super high. How do you guys handle somebody like me who says, not a person who's holding off, but how do you keep the surprise going if at the same time you're asking everybody for input on things you want to change? I'm sure you're holding some stuff back, but how do you keep people invested in something in what's going to be an enterprise of what, maybe I don't know how long your early access is planned, but like, how do you keep people engaged in that? Or are you maybe just saying, it's fine if you're not engaged, thanks for supporting us right at the starting? Like,
yeah,
how
I think
do you do all that?
One of our biggest things, like our stock answer to somebody who has this question, like, should I get in now? The answer is almost always no. If you're thinking that way, if that's and I totally understand that, and I have that feeling about early access games often as well, just because of my amount of time I have to play games is limited. So like, if I get into it and I play it, I'm going to play it sort of till I'm done with it usually. And then I may not come back to it with the same gusto. Maybe I'll look at it again, but maybe never again. So our general answer is like, no, we really think we'd love you to wish list and we'd love you to come back.
Wish list. Right. True.
Like check in, follow us, keep an eye on it. Like we're on update 108 right now. We're doing like one update every day. Every other day, there is always something new. There's new stories, new maps, new content, huge new systems dropping like every 2 weeks. So there's a lot going on. Like for the players who we just said, some players post up reviews with like 300, 400 hours in the game.
Damn.
They are finding stuff that is bringing them back. But we're at the pace that we're going, our aim is to roll out the systems that are in our design fast enough that those players have something new to check out. If like somebody was like, oh, I'm going out of town for the weekend, like I'll be back. Like, oh, we'll see how many updates you guys have done. And we're like, all right, well,
Right.
we dropped the entire crafting system on Friday. And then on Saturday, we updated this major system. And on like Sunday, we have these new things coming out as well. So by the time they came back, like, yeah, it's a different game again. So we are
That's
working.
awesome.
Our thing is like pace is so important in early access. If you let off that accelerator, if you're not showing the community, we call them F10s, the like bug reports in the game. If you have a problem, you have a feedback, you hit F10. Like we're gonna try to do something about it in days. The F10 system lets us do like a lot of hot fixes. If there's a real bug, we're like an hour later, build is up, it's fixed. Thank you.
Gotcha.
We're
Awesome.
all over it. So, and then we're just pushing like big features and content story. And the places where we want to hold something back, like some players are a little miffed because some of the storylines just have like a pause node. Try to be really upfront, like this storyline has stopped here. We're not going to release anything else. We don't want to leave you in some weird floating state where you don't know if it's going forward or if it's not. So we just put in a node at the end of your timeline that says like the story about your Vanguard's lost brother is paused, and we'll come back to it. We'll fill it out, but we're trying to avoid in that case being like, oh yeah, we added like a drip. We really want to be like, okay, that storyline, all of its cool completion is like to the end, go for it. So it's a mixed bag, but I think for us, pacing and really like staying close to the community, and especially the people who are playing a ton, talking to them every day. We're always in the Discord and like just pushing things forward so that they've got something else to check out, give us feedback on. And I think a lot of people feel like they're really, they have a hand stirring the batter in the kitchen through the window or whatever, because they know they've been in there, they've given us so much feedback, and we actually are like, oh, well, those are my bugs. Those are my fixes. I suggested that. Holy crap. They added that program. Matrix program decoy is in the game. This armor I requested, like it's in the game.
And
so
when you compare that type of process with the traditional, like, develop in an island and then release the full product before anybody sees it type thing, where it's a much more, I guess, isolated type of thing. Is that one of the reasons you decided to go with early access, because you wanted the continuous input
for
and stuff?
sure. Yeah, I mean, this is sort of, this one is so baked into how we have done this for the last decade. We always released games. We got better about this, but like we've always released games way too early. Like they were not ready, and we put them out on the market, and that we didn't know how to like back. That was before early access, really, like before we got to Steam. We would just release a game on mobile that was like, it wasn't
without
fun.
sound.
Without
no
without sound, with like no art, like stuff I drew.
That's awesome.
Like,
sound. We'll get to that.
Yeah. So then the people start screaming, and you start fixing, and then you're like, wait, but the people stopped screaming, they got happy. Like, so this has sort of just come to us in every game we've released. We've done. Used to call it alphas. That was what we would call it. And we did one for Cyber Knights, like this year-long process before early access with 1,000 backers from the Kickstarter. Gave them the game and did the same process, like with them, as many of them wanted to play as long as they wanted to play, to try to. But it's the core thing, is you're saying, if you go off in a back room or lock yourself in a bunker and iterate and make you and the people in the bunker all love the game, and then you come out of the bunker, you're like, look what we got. And somebody's like, well, the assault rifle's backwards. Like, what have you been doing?
Yeah, right.
The chance that you miss, or you just like screw it up, or you didn't get enough here or there, is really high. That's what for us early access is great. If we can convince people to wait, if this isn't for you, don't wish list, come back later. But like if you want to be in on something that is happening, we're doing it every day. That's all we do, is work on stuff for you guys and put it out, and we update nonstop. So if you want to be sure that we get the assault rifles, pointing the right way, you know, come
Barrel
join.
first, baby.
And we did have that bug. It was like we were adding this crafting system. It had a whole bunch of new mods, and they were all attached to the wrong slots. So there's like a barrel, you know, the stock is on the barrel, the ammo cartridge is going the wrong way.
Glitched guns.
Yeah. They look cool for about 24 hours. We patched it.
I think one of the things that we do for players that want to try the game and don't want to feel sort of bad about walking away is we maintain absolute backwards compatibility. So if you come in, you play the beginning.
Oh, I got you. Okay, sorry.
Whoa, wow.
You can
That's
always
rare.
load the game like a year later. Like Star Traders, if you played day one on Steam and loaded it today, the game would be fine. Everything would work, and all the new stories, like you were talking about, how kind of just like you bounce from connection to connection in this
it's
web.
awesome. Yeah.
All those webs just get added. So if you play Cyber Nights for 4 hours, take a year off, come back, your game's still fine, your guys are still there, your crew's there, but now when you press go, all the new storylines and whatever else we've written and added in the interim year just starts happening in your game. So you know, if there's an early story that maybe you feel like you missed because it was added later, it's just going to pop up, you know, as you go. So we do try really hard to make it an experience that doesn't frustrate people that want to just try an early access game. Maybe they don't want to commit a lot of time. So we do think a lot about the friction that comes with playing a game that's maybe not 100% complete.
Huh. Our Green super chat. Thank you very much. I'll read that in a second when we wrap this discussion up. So one of the things that you guys have been doing, and it's, you know, when I announced this, there were people DMing me asking questions, and people who've been in your Discord who are all happy, by the way, which is awesome and rare to see. Normally, there's always somebody out there complaining, but everybody was saying that your guys' support, your early, your consistent early access patches was one of the ones I saw, and I think that Andrew hit that, and I hadn't really put two and two together, but the consistency is probably pretty ideal for me as somebody who's always checking my game. If it is early access, I used to always check, be like, where's a patch? Where's this thing? Where's this new thing? And they would disappear because I think they hadn't adjusted early access style. They had still, even though it was an early access, it was an island release, as Johnny said, and then they might wait a month or so, which today's game environment is so fast. You could add Game Pass to that. You could add subscription services, everything to that. It's so easy to be lost. And we hear a lot about wish lists. We hear a lot about these ways in which people can support but not buy it right now. You know, they want to wish list this later. Is wish listing as... I don't want you guys to give a bad answer. So I don't want to say is wish listing as important as I'm hearing, but I am hearing every single dev mention wish listing. So how about this? Why is wish listing so important? Because every dev I talk to says it's vital, and I don't 100% understand why. What does wish list do for you? My
belief is that part of the value of wishlist is that it is indicating to Valve a level of hype about the game. Like a user visits a page and they do nothing. Valve goes, that was a miss. Maybe I shouldn't send so many users. But if the user comes and they go, you know what? Wish list. Valve's going to say, okay, so that's a little additional velocity, right? You didn't buy it. That the dev, of course, would love your money. First and foremost, they can pay for more development. But what you really want as a developer is Valve to love you, right? Because people will buy the game this week. It'll do well in summer sale. But if Valve thinks you're the stuff, they're going to always be sending you the right customers. So that wish list, I think developers have recognized that when the wish list velocity goes up, Valve sends more users, more wish lists.
The discovery queue, you mean, like
exactly.
on Steam's Mage Bay. Okay.
Yep. And so then you get more people coming in, you get more recommendations. And developers have a couple of tools to reach out to their wish lists, like news posts and updates and big promotions, Steam promotion options. So that wish list is the developers like, I can get value from Valve, I can get a way to talk to you, and it costs neither of us anything. All you have to do is click the little green button. So I think developers have figured out that it's it's a low-cost way to get that engagement.
Mm-hmm.
And then, especially early access developers are like, don't even buy it right now. Just wishlist it. You'll get a big announcement from Steam when the game's ready,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can buy it. You know, so it's a way that you don't lose customers, because I think, like you said, in a world where there's a bazillion ways to get games, you might only visit that Steam page once. And the developer knows, like, man, if I don't have something to hook them, I'm never going to see them again. So the wish list is that. I think is that for a lot of people.
Yeah, I don't know about you guys. I've had issues with Steam Discovery in the past anyway, and search and, you know, weird filters and all that kind of stuff. And luckily, I do see your guys' stuff all the time, which it's most likely because I've wishlisted them in the past. And I had always wondered, because I hear so many people talk about it, and I actually think it might be weirdly enough, you guys don't see money from it, but it might be more useful than the money in a weird way, because if they wishlist it, then it's not, if you buy it, it's done. You've made the purchase. Maybe Steam has a thing where it's like they've already bought that, so we'll show them something else. But if they've wishlisted it, they're going to get all the updates, like you said. I hadn't really dived into it that much, but it's an interesting way that Steam works, because it reminds me of the thumbs up on YouTube, but it's actually useful and means something, which is a huge difference between YouTube, where nothing means anything. You know, whether it be a comment or a thumb up, it means absolutely nothing.
As a buyer, it really works for me, because whenever there's a discount or it's, you know, going to full release or whatever, you will get a pop-up, right? It will say, oh, there's a wishlisted game
that's awesome
that just popped up, right? And many times I will have, like you guys say, I will have forgotten about the game, because maybe it's been right. No, like, nothing against them, but it's been 2 years. You know, they're going at it, they're making their game, and now, oh, I remember that. That was cool. And that's a really good way to stay in the loop and be like, yeah, you know, I'm interested in this. Hit me up when it's ready, right? Let them cook. Hit me up when it's ready.
Oh, God. Come on with the slang.
Let him cook.
Let him cook. I mean, there's a big, we all have too many games in our Steam library. We all, you know, it's too many games to look at. So it's a big thing to be able to have that low cost click. You can also follow a developer, which gives you more visibility. But I don't know, for us, I mean, there is money in it, because people, as you're saying, Johnny, like, you get those emails. And if you've wishlisted, like, Star Traders is now a venerable 6 years old. And has a lot of people on its wish list, and goes on sale pretty regularly, and
so they get
people are still getting those emails. And I mean, I think I don't know if, I guess whatever, but Star Traders has an amazing percentage, like over 30% of people who click that wish list button lifetime for the game eventually bought the game.
Oh,
That's
damn.
awesome.
That's like double Steam's average.
Yeah, I was going to say, that seems higher than what I saw.
Yeah, it's way above what Steam normally pulls down. But like, those people watch the game and they're like, oh, these guys are still updating this damn game. And eventually they come around and be like, 347 updates? What the hell? I'm going to buy it, you know? So that for developers, I don't know how it works for other developers who have a little bit different style, maybe like don't update or abandon their game or whatever. But for us, as our way of it, like, we just did update 347 for Star Traders last week or a couple days ago. Like, we love our games. We're still working on them. People are still giving us feedback. Well, hell, we'll still update them. So, and we'll still put them on sale, and there's still something happening there. So those for us, wish list is lifetime value. You click that, like, we won't forget you, and we'll keep reminding you, and maybe you'll eventually give in and just, you know, join the family.
I love the idea that there's a real feedback too, because John's YouTube, I'm YouTube, Johnny's YouTube and Twitch, and we see the algorithm and the feedback not one for one. It's not even 1 for 100 anymore. If somebody subscribes, it means nothing. If somebody thumbs up, it means nothing. If they comment, it really means very little. It's whatever the algorithm is matching you with other videos. I've seen videos do insanely well, and they're really not matched, but for whatever reason, it hit the zeitgeist. And then another one that appears to have everything it should, it doesn't seem to be catching on. And I'm not just talking about one personal one, so do I. But with you guys, the ability, like you said, the ability to do an update for an old game. I'm pretty sure when I first said you guys were on here, I'm pretty sure one of the first comments in our YouTube was you guys had updated Battle Brothers. Is that correct? Or
Battle
Templar Templar Battle Force, yes.
Templar Battle Force, sorry. And somebody noticed that you guys had updated that years later, and they were like, dude, they just updated that, or they updated at some point. They said it at the starting.
Yeah, pretty recently.
Yeah, so the idea that you guys are, you know, and it's smart on your guys' part. I'm not saying you're doing this, but it's very smart to continue in some way to work on those older games, because then, like you said, if it goes on sale or what have you, that's just a way for you guys to get some money, some new fans who then might see and go, oh, they have a cyberpunk heist game that's like XCOM. What the is going on? Because that's the way I felt, because I was playing your guys' games, and when you guys showed this one, I was like, what the hell? That's not what I expected. And then I was like, oh Christ, that's exactly what I want. But now that I think about it, I don't think I would have found out if I hadn't, because I don't follow Kickstarter. I think pretty much the only way I found out was Steam. So one time Steam worked right. Sorry, Steam doesn't work right for me almost ever. So I'm really happy it worked for me on your guys' game. Our Green is asking a super chat. It's probably more for maybe John and myself. John probably knows maybe more about this, or I don't know. I think we've talked about this before. Arg says, awesome guests. Can someone explain downgrades like the Watchdog and Division? I believe he's talking about the E3 trailers we saw and were so often discussed.
The Puddlegate.
Are these Watchgate? Are these early release versions ever real, or just too system expansive or expensive? I want to say what I think, and then you tell me I'm wrong, John. Here's what I think happens. I don't think it's always these companies out there to grift you. I think many times their assumption of technology and their ability to deliver something is pretty much exactly what they're showing or close to it. Some have lied. But I think many times these companies are trying to show you what they think they're going to be able to hit. Especially, I believe Watch Dogs was pre-Xbox Original and PlayStation coming out, and I believe there was a misstep on maybe what they thought the technology would offer. And then a lot of it is just how game development goes. They think they're going to be able to deliver something, and they can't for the frame rate and the resolution they're trying to hit, and so they have to change it. Am I completely wrong, John?
Man, the thing is though, is it's going to vary a lot per project, right? And it is obviously a lot of. I think people would be surprised at how incomplete games can look throughout their development cycle, even within like a year or less of release. There's still going to be a lot of stuff that's extremely incomplete. Like I was involved with a game that I can't say yet, but like even like a year out, even though the game was playable from start to finish, like most of it was still white box.
Absolutely.
Like, still detail going in everywhere. And like, so you're like targeting this thing, and you make this perfect little, I think the Evening Star guys talk. Well, there's vertical slice, but also these beautiful corners. This idea that you put all these resources and effort into making this little area look so good, and because that's where your attention is focused, you're focused on making this like the perfect image of what you want your game to be.
Right.
But then the actual resources required to make that happen across the board, really, really difficult. And this is like what happened with like the Puddlegate thing on Spider-Man, right? And I'm very happy that Insomniac actually used my video on that.
They did
in their GDC presentation, because
what's his name, John? What was the developer's name? I watched that GDC twice.
I can't remember which one it was that presented on stage.
The program architect for Spider-Man, because even he called you guys out and was like, you guys had covered and done a better job than he felt he could even do.
Oh, I don't know about that, but
that's what they said.
So the thing there was like, in the demo, because it was this constrained scene, they used a bunch of like box projected cube maps that were very hand placed and beautiful. They perfectly lined up with the scenery. Problem is, placing cube maps like that across an entire giant open world by hand, and also having the memory to do that across that entire world at that fidelity, it's not realistic, right? So yeah, they can do it in that little space that just includes the demo, but when you have to do it across the whole game, they came up with a more homogeneous solution, right? It's coming up with these solutions to cover all this area, and a lot of it's just about the manpower more than anything else. And because of that, they couldn't take that exact approach that they used for this vertical slice across the whole game, and it changed, right? And it's technically, you can describe it as a downgrade, but it's more just like the reality of what it takes to build these things. It's like it's like if you created a movie trailer before all the post effects were in, and you hadn't done all the CG work, you hadn't done the color grading, it's just like the raw camera, it's going to look very different. And it's the same kind of thing here, but like you're trying to make something that looks complete before it's anywhere close to being complete, right? And yeah, it's just, and I think it's often less about hardware and more about just manpower, time, and budget, like actually executing on, because when you make these vertical slices, there's a lot of money that goes into that, a lot of effort and very specific attention, but you can't necessarily scale that up to the entire game, and then you end up with these situations.
Cliff Basinski did a really good talk about how much it costs for gears and making a slice, and the unbelievable, just not even making senseness of it all. It was just just the amount of money that went out. And the only feedback I had for Ubisoft one time was that don't fake discussion or voice chat in your games ever again. Because I don't know if you guys remember, it's the worst.
Oh, the Division did that too.
That's the one I emailed them and I was like, listen,
it's embarrassing.
Love you guys. Don't ever do that again.
Don't do that again.
Because gamers will sniff that out. No one in history has ever sounded like that in a voice chat. And they're like, I'll go to the right, tango down. Oh, and you're all, dude, this guy is screaming at the top of his lungs saying, guys over here, guys over here. That's a normal gamer and how a normal gamer talks. The Division one was reading from a script and they're like, I've got 17 resources for blah, blah. No human in history
nobody
talks
like that.
And so I think the doubling down on the fake presentation definitely could hurt Division, because you get that uncanny valley of discussion and sound and voice, and you start going, okay, this all appears too clean. I've also unfortunately and fortunately got to test some games that are gray boxed, fully, like you're just jumping around. You've got a character that somewhat looks like it. And it was way later in the development than anybody would ever assume.
Dude, it was the same. Yeah, exactly.
Don't say it, but it might even be the same game. But I just played one within the last 6 months that is not too far out, more than a year, but less than 2. And I'm telling you, John, if anybody knew what that game looked like, they'd be like, 4 years. A normal gamer would be like, there's no possible way that's going to be out in this amount of time.
Man, when we worked on RZ, the Jewel of Faramore, doing the level design stuff, one of the signature things to that game is that all the backgrounds are hand painted, right? That takes time. Yeah. So like most of development, like all we saw was just like the collision tiles with, like, sometimes Seth would do literally a hand sketched drawing for the background to kind of like, this is what it's kind of going to hopefully look like. And then only in the last 6 months you started to see the backgrounds, like the artists start to finish the backgrounds and then get them integrated into the game. And it's like, it completely changes everything. You're like, oh, this looks great now. Like, you kind of have to go, you're going off such a feeling for so long. And I think that's probably just like when you do those demos, man, you're just focused on the demo, and then it's time to get the real work, and it doesn't always go according to plan. Like, if you go back further, look at the Halo 2 reveal from 2003, I believe, or Bungie, it was either 2003, 2002, when Bungie first showed the single player campaign. Remember that, like the city map, running around in the Warthog. They had the full stencil shadow system in place, all kinds of crazy stuff that they wanted to do, and they just couldn't make it happen in the end for the whole game, and that had to be changed. So I think it's just like, this is what the developers set out, is what they want to achieve, and then the real development happens, and sometimes you just can't make it happen, and there's so many reasons why.
And
I don't think it's never malicious, though. Like 9 times out of 10, I'd say nobody wants to fool the customer. That's a very bad thing, and it only reflects bad on your game.
And
nobody
it costs
wants
you
to
so
do
much
that, right?
money to make those. You probably don't want to do them anyway.
Right.
And I do want to say, I'm now going to argue with myself and say, unless that motherfucker is a CGI trailer pretending to be real, and I'm sorry, I wish those would die in a fire. Like, any of the CGI trailer stuff kills me now whenever I see it.
Yeah.
That's the one thing I would like to see go away from the industry. Just get rid of the CGI trailers. This is going to be Fable, and you look at it and you're like,
that kind of creates a problem, though, because like, if you want to announce something,
how do you show it?
And you don't have that money to make that vertical slice, or you're worried about a downgrade situation, what do you do? CG trailer, right? And instead, so it's like, but maybe the answer is stop announcing games so early.
Right.
They didn't need to announce Perfect Dark like 4 or 5 years ago.
Yep.
Remember
they really
when,
should not have.
Dennis Dyack was talking about when he was making Too Human. Dennis Dyack was saying that he wished we could go back, or we could go to a time where you had like 3 to 6 months before anybody knew about a game. Now leakers will destroy that quite quickly. Unfortunately, somebody a leaker is going to destroy that. But I do like that. I do like that situation. I don't think Shadow Drops I'm as excited for because I love the idea, but I don't think they sell as well as people think.
No.
I think, in fact, I think Hi-Fi Rush ultimately was probably negative impacted by a Shadow Drop versus maybe 2 weeks. Give it some PR juice. I mean, I'm not even talking about myself because I rarely do previews, but get some people to, experience it, stream it, do a level, or have a demo. We have some questions here for these guys real quick. Let's see. Man, we got a lot of questions. Okay, let me do Discord questions first. Thank you, Discord, for reminding me. I always ask you guys to give questions to the guests, and then I immediately, of course, disregard them right away. Sorry. I always mistreat. Let's see. Here we go. Nangle is asking both you guys, when developing strengths, weaknesses, counters in a game's mechanics, so for your a character in the game developing a perk or strength or weakness, how intentional are you? And is there a typical pattern you ensure is occurring? For example, do you determine before development begins that X is going to be strong against Y, so fire against water, but weak against Z? Or is it more of a natural occurrence during development and during playtesting? So does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah.
Go for it.
So I would say that we often start with a set of rules, concepts of strengths and weaknesses. We do tier lists. So here's the tier list for this category. Here's the tier list for this category. Mm-hmm. So we can come back and we can be like, all right, here's what an assault rifle. When I say an assault rifle, I mean this much recoil, this much damage compared to the other thing. So you do that kind of strength comparison and you come up with a set of rules. We're often looking for ways to connect systems. So that's a big thing for us is there's kind of a rule that interactions should never just be like 2 mechanics. There should always be multiple mechanics interacting. And I think for us, one of the important things is you make that set of rules and then you don't feel like they're really law. They're like guidelines where occasionally you have to go outside the line. Sometimes you need to turn things on their head or have exceptions that feel fun. That comes back to a lot of we try to write the rules. We play test the game a ton, and we're always what we call chasing the fun. So if there's a mechanic that feels great, some of the moves in Cyberknights were sort of glitches or things that didn't work right in another implementation, but you were like, that's a fun mechanic. We need to figure out a way to bring that forward. So a lot of experimentation and tracing down things that feel good.
Would you guys say, sorry, Andrew, did you have anything to add to that before I wanted to do an addendum to this?
No, I think that was good. That was awesome.
When you guys so we've talked about this a little bit prior, but then I saw your interviews. You guys do a lot of pen and paper testing of your games, as well as just, it sounds like Dungeons and Dragons. That's what I'm going to call it, role playing for anybody else. It can be anything. Are you guys starting with a base? So for this game in particular, were you guys just sitting at a table going, all right, we sort of want cyberpunk style game, but with heists? And I know I saw your interview where you guys were talking about in D&D, normally you're not in a car and you all get shot and die. You usually go to you get to plan for the heist. You get to do this stuff. So when you guys were building your rules for this, did you just start from scratch, or I'm not talking about the rules themselves, but how did you come up with the idea, for example, of the heist kind of feel versus XCOM, which is more of a setup? XCOM's more like, I've updated my guy, he's this, I built my base, which you guys have, but then less of the heist kind of feel that you guys, the Ocean's 11 cyberpunk version that you guys are sort of trying to hit. How did you guys definitively say that's what we want?
That's a good question. I think for Cyberknights, so much of this game is just wrapped around trying to reproduce tabletop gaming experience.
Yeah.
I mean, there's the real core of it is that you will sit around the table with a bunch of your friends, and they're all playing characters in a game world. Especially for Cyberpunk, it seems to be very common. They all have problems. They all owe somebody money.
Yeah,
Somebody's trying to kill that guy. Like
merits and
we're
flaws.
running from
There's
this
always a
other. Yeah, and they have a huge mess, and half the game is like literally trying to get them in the van so we can go on the heist because they got problems, right? So this, and they have friends, and you're calling contacts, and you're trying to find those high power explosives you need, but like the fixer's breathing down your neck about something else, and like, you know, Joey disappeared again. Nobody knows where he hasn't been seen for days. So that kind of feeling, we wanted that to be really the concept of what you're doing when you're trying to get ready to go, and then as you go, you know, it can lead to, in RPG land and D&D land, like the planning fatigue where like the crew sits down and 4 hours later they've decided how to roll the barrel down the hill to hit the tower to collapse it on the wagon to, like, you know, whatever. So that planning phase is so critical to be able to get all the right stuff, get all your gears together, pay the right bribes, and then go on the mission. So I would say, you know, through and through, it all really does come back to our experience doing a lot of Cyberpunk RPGs, tabletop stuff, because once you get on the mission, you're with the same group of misfits who are sure to screw something up. And, you know, the first couple minutes go pretty well. You pick a door, you know, and then somebody sees a loot box and they're like, oh, I'm going over there. And you're like, no, don't, there's guards. And then somebody's hacking and somebody shoots a gun, and then it just goes, you know, out the window. And from there, it's just you're blowing stuff up and getting back to the van and, you know, firefight, retreat. So all of that stuff kind of comes back to the inspiration of tabletop games and wanting to kind of, for me, to squeeze that into this game and to say, like, we want that sort of stuff to be felt and to have that. You know, I think a cool example that we recently added during early access, and it really hits the nail, is like multi-exit point extractions. Like when you're scattering at the end of the level, when you're done, you do have to leave the building. You did whatever illegal thing you came to do, and you have to leave. So, but like everybody can go out a different window, right? There could be like multiple places. You just get out of the building. But that feels very, you know, like later you get back to the safe house and everybody's like, so how'd you get out, you know, from in RPG land? So I don't, yeah, I would say tabletop for me is where we like sat down and said, like, how can we translate this? How can we bring these feelings over?
What are the best things that we could really get into a game that worked as a video game component and try to achieve the same emotional impact? And I think one of the core things about playing at a tabletop is the players get to decide the direction the story goes based on, you know, sometimes the game master can be terribly frustrating. You're like, he's an innkeeper. Stop obsessing over the innkeeper. He's just a guy, you know. But at the same time, like you're like, all right, we're going to roll with it. Like the innkeeper's the leader of a secret society, and like you know, I think that's one of the fun things that you can do in a tabletop game that's hard to recreate in a video game, is that like the player's attention is the spotlight that really matters. And I think that's one of the exciting things about Cyberknights is the characters you focus on, the contacts you deal with. They're the story. You're like, I like this arms dealer. I'm going to do missions for him. So he's the one that's going to be involved. You know, you're going to build up his orbit and his connections, and it'll really be different than the next person's game based on the choices you made as a player. So that's one of the core things I think that we wanted to bring over from tabletop, was that feeling of deciding what happens next.
I mean, everybody here has done Baldur's Gate 3, right? I just want to make sure that nobody's... I think with Baldur's Gate 3, I saw the mechanical... I mean, certainly the role-playing side was there, but I saw a lot of the mechanical side. We saw Divinity Original Sin, for me, Divine Divinity. They were already well on their way to establishing some parts of it feeling like a role-playing game. But like you said, the role-playing game part can go off the rails to where you're like, at some point, we actually have to do something. And I think a lot of game companies can't figure out how to get that balance right, so it's just planning and then going into the mission, and then little bits on the side. So the idea that you guys are sort of making it so that the player's focus becomes a little bit of the gameplay itself is awesome. And I think a lot of companies have huge struggles with that. I mean, it just feels like a lot of times you can feel that the game is saying, dude, go on the mission. Whether it's like, hey, you're out of turns in your base, or that fucking cat in Persona who's like, you've taken too many actions today, you can't take anymore, and you're like, I'm gonna knock this cat off there. I just want to read a book. Like, how hard is this? So the idea that you guys are sort of trying to identify where that goes and come from a role playing background, I think is important. We're seeing it more. I think for the longest time we would have role players who would dive into video games, and they were so enamored by the mechanics and the ability to show things that we lost because for our group, because we've been doing it for 35 years now, there's role playing and role playing, ROLL, ROLE. You're trying to mix them, and depending on the game. And our 20 plus year game right now is a game where at times the players will focus on the innkeeper. But everybody sort of knows that that's probably not what's going to fit the person's needs. It's more the player's needs. Maybe they need a downtime a little bit. And I think it's cool that you guys are trying to do this. I've wondered about AI, and not to put you guys on the spot, because I know AI is such a troublesome thing. But I wonder in the future if these kind of things, like, because I'm assuming you guys are just doing branch narratives and you're connecting everything with all these trees, stuff that the Cyberpunk devs have stated they couldn't do with the Cyberpunk engine, and in fact had to switch everything and really cut down on the choice because the engine wasn't supporting it. One of the major reasons they switched engines. Do you guys find merging all this super difficult? Because it feels like if you get enough in there, even you guys would lose. Where the hell is this character go? Like, what matters? What doesn't matter for this character? Do you guys find yourselves looking over decision trees and what to connect? It sounds like you said you just sort of sometimes go on fun and just say fun is the answer. Is that sort of what you guys end up with? And you just say, we're not going to worry about how deep this player wants to investigate this thing. You've got like 3 clues and that's it. Like, how do you guys parse that and continue developing without it costing thousands upon thousands of dollars and man hours to do?
So for Cyber Knights, we kind of came up with we're always building the next game off the back of the last one. So Star Traders had a pretty good setup of this system where there was what we called a procedural game engine for story. So it would look at the state of the universe and what you were up to and the turn and a number of things and how many stories are currently active, and be like, okay, like the player needs a new thing to do. There's not enough going on, or they're not currently engaging with the storyline that they've been offered. So like, okay, like next time they land, someone needs to talk to them and be like, hey.
Right.
And they're like,
controls
like,
pacing.
Just kind of controls pacing and pulled from a random hat and would only pull certain things if you've done this or done that. So there were some basic conditions for how things would get put into the game. That's what we did for Star Traders. For Cyber Knights, we try to kind of evolve that process a good deal, and we came up with an idea of a story component called the casting director, and that's sort of the central hub where like we have a storyline that we need a gun runner.
It's a lot like your game master.
Yeah, like and we're like, so we have a storyline, and it needs some things to be able to run. It has some conditions, but it also needs some actors. Like we can't run a storyline without people who fit these roles. So we put a ton of metadata on every character and every NPC in the game, and that metadata kind of evolves as you make choices and things happen. And so the casting director is like looking at the characters and be like, can we fulfill the storyline yet about there's a gun runner who needs to connect with this shady contact in Germany, and he's going to start importing guns, but it's like it may turn out to be a bad deal for him. We're looking for a gun runner and like and a character who likes him. Like we don't have that yet. And then it'll look again a little later and be like, we do have a gun runner, and they've worked with him a few times, so he's a good choice, and there is someone who likes him, and so let's go with that. So it kind of like looks around and has a bunch of storylines that it can pick from, and it keeps looking to see if the group of actors fulfill the roles. So that for us is like a cool idea, that it can create this coherence. Like if that gun runner does this thing with the German contact, then he gets all the new metadata hanging off him about a risky deal, and he's working with the Warner Braun, the corporation from Germany, and he has these new weapons. And the next time the casting director comes around, he might have maybe he fits a new storyline that he didn't fit before. And so he can get sucked into it. So in different games, you'll get different characters getting sucked into these storylines, characters and NPCs, and maybe the ordering is very different, or, that gunrunner that last time, maybe he just gets killed. Like maybe a week later he comes to you because he got picked up by the casting director because he has like shady dealings, so the cops are onto him, and he needs you really badly to like kill this witness the cops are bringing into protection before that snitch like rats him out to the cops. He's like, you got to get rid of him for me. And if you fail to get rid of him, then maybe he just gets, the cops pick him up a week later. So you have this cool setup where he gets this really powerful importer of weapons, but then you fail to back him up and he gets thrown in jail and you lose your imported weapons. But maybe in the next game it's a totally different gunrunner, and that gunrunner never gets picked up by the cops. He has some other problem with a debt to the syndicates or something. And so by kind of letting to me, I always think of Factorio, like those sort of building games where you're like building, the pipes go into different things, and it's like all about, and so if you get enough building blocks, you can kind of like move it around, and the pipes will become, we're in early access, we're getting almost to the point where I start to feel like we have enough pipes where things will really start to move around and get crazy. We're kind of almost there right now. It still feels, every time you play, it still feels like the pipes kind of all fall into the same order, close to the same order. You get different stuff, but it's never radically different. But we're starting to get really close. There's like a story about they can attach to a character who doesn't have any children and like is in some straight-laced job. And they have a kid who has a problem kid, and you find out you can like try to go rescue their adult son or daughter, and you find out that they're actually not really a problem. They're just trying to do stuff in the underworld to make their own money in their own way. And the parent is like mad that this is risking their mega corporate career, like in a cyberpunk way. And that can connect to about 20 different contacts in any given game. And then they become a problem because, anyway, so it's starting to get to that point where you're like, oh, the pipes are going to really get moving because there's enough pipes to get this crazy juggling game on. So we're super excited about where that's going with early access as we keep loading up the stories. And that's how we kind of are trying to stay sane about it. It's not so much that we have to juggle this immense decision tree and like think about like the thing you did back here and all the branches it could run down. It's more like each of these individual things, if it's coherent and the casting director like doesn't pick someone who doesn't make any sense to put into that role, then we can, as long as that little pipe, that chunk of pipe makes sense, then we can like get you through that one and then attach a totally different pipe to the end of it next time around, and you get this flow. So we're super psyched about it to see what we can do with it, and so far it's yielded pretty awesome results, and it's keeping us sane. You have to go back and work on individual pipes, and we just released this new game system, new character system that's much more RPG driven. And for example, one of the new backgrounds you can be as an ex-cop. So there's a number of pipes that have to do with dealing with corrupt cops, and like we have to go back into those and make sure that they accommodate new backstories and stuff. So there's a lot of maintenance like that, but you're still sort of working on individual units that can plug together in ways that aren't, it's not just one giant tree that you have to kind of like, anytime you change something here, it has a huge ripple effect. It's sort of like localized in a way.
Oh, very cool. Did you have
the casting?
Go ahead. Oh, go ahead. No, go for it. Go for it.
I was just going to say the casting director uses a lot of like personality traits and tags that are associated with the characters. So like you can pick somebody with a vendetta. I've got a story that has a vendetta and it needs a villain, and it looks for like corporate villains, vendetta holding person with a grudge or something. So the roles assigned into the stories are cohesive based on what they've done before or what traits you picked when you recruited them.
Damn, see, I like that kind of stuff. I mean, it's sort of in the weeds for a lot of people, but to me, we're revisiting for a video I'm going to do Watch Dogs Legion. Watch Dogs Legion has the census system, which is, unfortunately for a lot of developers, I actually think, is Watch Dogs Legion didn't come out of the gates really well. But if you go and play it, they do this thing where they lie just a little bit, on purpose to make you believe everything's organic. And those kind of systems to me are some of the best when you have a little tag that connects two characters. It doesn't have to be like you're saving this guy's son and now he owes you, but it's like you just see a little bit over here, a little bit tagged. And a couple days ago, I was doing something in that game and I saw that as another character. I went and looked at their profile and it said, another character saved this guy's life, another character saved his wife, another character beat up his son. And it was positives and negatives. And I remember looking at that going, that's my history as a unit, watching this and seeing those small connections. They didn't matter in the end game overall. Only 1 or 2 of the 50 did. But that's enough, at least for me, and I think for most gamers, that's all you need. And as a person who does role-playing, you know that's the way it is with role-playing. You only need to... How many times have you lied to players? They'll be like, how'd this guy know? And you're like... and then somebody else in the game will go, oh, do you think it was because we bumped into that guy in the street? And as the DM, because I don't write down any games, it's all freeform, I'm like, probably. And everybody's all, what a master, this is the best game ever. And you're like, yeah, because of you guys. You guys are putting that shit together. Like, and that kind of stuff is the best. And it's something I wasn't aware you were doing even a small amount of this. I wasn't quite aware how you guys were doing it with the traders games, but I definitely noticed it there, little bits that I couldn't figure. I was going more old style, I think, and how you guys were probably doing it. But I can tell you, it works. It's the same thing that I think the original Dying Light, what's the State of Decay did very well, where you saw these characters with connections, and it makes you care a little bit. It makes you go, oh, this guy's not just dead and no one cares. Is they dead? And then now you're bumping into his daughter and you start going, is this person gonna have a problem with me because I was involved in the mission? Or are they gonna be angry at the enemy? And the player can fill a lot of that out themselves. That's very cool. You guys are working on that. What engine did you go with for the new one? We're
using Unity.
You're using Unity. Gotcha.
Yep.
With a decision for a game engine, can you guys give me 2 examples of what made you choose Unity? What comes up in your brain as I'm choosing between 2 or 3 engines? We chose Unity.
Well, this was a big choice. We've done it a couple of times, right? This is our 3rd engine switch. We knew that based on our company and funding and stuff, if we do switch engines, we're going to be where we land for 5 years, at least, minimum, probably more. Okay. So we wanted to really make sure, we can't switch engines every game because we have to support the old games, as we've said, and our new games. So 2 engines right now is about as much as we can handle. So another engine for the next game, impossible. So we were really confident we had to pick something that was going to last. And we wanted to pick something that would let us scale. One of the things we've had trouble doing in the past is like Andrew and I worked on our custom engine. We were the only people that really knew how it worked. And we built all the tools ourselves. So one of the things we wanted was like an engine that other studios, other composers and musicians and people would be like, yeah, I know the tools to integrate with Wise under Unity. I know how to give you graphics, or I can do this. So we made a big matrix of pros and cons, where different engines performed really well and where they didn't perform as well. And then we talked to partners who we were considering working with to do art, and asked them, like, what engines do you guys really dig on? And none of them said your weird custom one. So we threw that one out right away. And Unity just felt like it checked all the boxes. It was also it's C# based, and where we have a long history with C# as developers. So that was really good. Although I guess technically we write it in C# and then we transpile it into C++ and then we compile it, but technical details.
When it comes to, you said it makes sense, obviously not switching engines, each game or something like that. So what you're saying is, technically, you've got this old engine, this other one that you guys, your own engine or whatever. So that means for updating that, one of you guys is basically booting that up and going to the old one and like making adjustments in the old game engine and then
into the old mines. Yeah, the deep tunnels.
Damn. It's
rough. Wet and cold down there.
Yeah, that's some rough shit right there. I mean, just because compatibility issues with Windows, let's say, as things move forward, or whatever.
Windows isn't bad. Windows
is it Android
fine.
or is it
God.
is it
It's
Android?
It's Mac and Linux and Android and iOS.
Oh boy,
That's rough.
Windows is amazing. I don't know how they keep it so stable. It's just like, yeah, I can run that. That's fine.
I can figure that out. But trying to boot up some, I hadn't even thought about you guys going back because the updates. I guess I am thinking Windows, where it's like most of the time somebody can figure out a way to do it. But the idea of like going back to some ancient system and trying to get an update out, kudos to you guys, because most devs I think would be like, yeah, so we're sunsetting this one. Thank you for your time. We're moving on.
I have to brace myself when I open Visual Studio 2012 to do the programming.
How do you handle the? Do you just do you block out a time like once a month to maybe go back and like start looking at it? Do you block yourself out? Like, how do you do that? Or is it just more like, oh, we should probably go back and touch something up here? Like, do you schedule out time?
I'm a huge nerd. So I play Star Traders Frontiers on my phone whenever I am bored. Like, I play my own games a lot. So I work on Star Traders every week. I do block out time, like you said. I find that's really effective for stuff that, like, obviously really passionate about Cyber Knight, super distracted by it. So if I don't block out work time for Star Traders, then you just end up doing Cyber Knights all week. So I have a day, and we have a roadmap, and a lot of people still play it.
Yeah.
So they DM me great ideas. Like, somebody sent me a ship, was like, hey, I designed the ship. I think it would help this kind of player, and it fits this thing. And they referenced some Steam posts, and I was like, sold. We're doing an update based on this ship and your ideas. So that was his update. I just took his DM and converted it into code and tested it and balanced it, and we put it out. So, our community makes keeping these games alive really easy because they play them and they love them and they talk to us. It would be a lot harder for me to do Star Traders updates into the void, right? Like,
if you're not getting any feedback at all. Yeah.
That kind of works tough. I mean,
I don't think anybody likes that. Yeah, when you put something out and you don't get any response, you're like, that is worse than bad response. When nobody has noticed something.
Couldn't you at least be angry?
Oh, dude, there's been times where I released a video and I'm like, even if it's getting a bunch of views, I'm not getting a lot of comments on it, and I'll go and look, and people are like, yeah, pretty good. So anyway, and you're like, ooh, that one didn't hit. I want to either piss somebody off or make somebody happy. I don't want somebody to be apathetic towards it. Like that's the worst. Christopher gives a $20 super chat. Thank you very much, Christopher. He says, John, on DF, you guys were talking about FromSoft gaslighting performance issues. Why is it that they put in ray tracing, but they can't put in DLSS, etc., to make it more viable? Love the game, but why do they get a pass on performance? First of all, I want to point something out. They don't get a pass, and I also removed my review for a buy when that first patch came out, because that's one of the worst first patches I ever got. Was Elden Ring. Why do you think they haven't added DLSS to that?
I mean, we definitely don't give them a pass either. We've taken the hammer to them pretty hard.
Yeah.
I mean, DLSS would be nice, but I feel like that's the kind of the least of its worries right now. Like, that would be a nice to have, but it's more the console performance is still subpar, and the way they do things on that specific game on the PC, I don't know, man. It's super weird. There's just a lot of deep issues with it that I'm suspect probably aren't that easy to fix at this point.
Right.
And I'm not sure that they would be able to correct that so as easily. The ray tracing edition on consoles and PC was also very weird because it's a very minor. It's just like a Shadows, I think.
Yeah.
Which isn't. And that can be interesting if you have enough performance overhead, because ray trace shadows look awesome, but like they didn't have that overhead. But it's more the fact that they've just continued to. I mean, the game just has this very unstable frame rate on consoles when we know for a fact that it can run at a lock 60 on them. Case in point, PS4 version runs at a lock 60 on a PS5 without issues. And the scale backs they made there are relatively minor. So knowing that, and that the PS5 and backwards compatibility mode has some limitations compared to native mode as well, they could absolutely find some sort of settings middle ground to get the performance where it should be, and they just haven't done it. And we're all confused by this as well, especially because Armored Core 6 by From Software, probably different team, came out pretty well. PC version, high frame rate support above 60, ultra wide support, none of the shader compilation stutter issues that Elden Ring has real bad.
I'm glad I wasn't the only one, John, because those killed me whenever that happened.
Dude, yeah, I mean, Elden Ring is Stutter City on the PC.
It actually killed you.
It absolutely
probably got him
once.
killed. Yeah, the FPS may get you killed in a game if it's stuttering
because
like that.
Imagine an enemy does a certain attack that loads a specific like sound file or like shader or something right at that moment, and it's never been used before. The game will stutter loading it and pause.
Yeah, I've literally had it mid-fight where they're about to land an attack and the game freezes for like half a second and then it catches up. But guess what? You're getting hit by that attack for sure.
It's such a shame.
It is, and John and I've talked about this a couple times. Maybe just the one. I feel like we've talked about it in the years I've known you, but there's been a couple games where the patch comes out and it's worse than what you review. And this is rare, but there's been a couple. Spider-Man 2.
Dude, Spider-Man 2's first patch completely broke the game.
I don't even understand what's
going
on.
So bad.
Dude, that was one, other than Elden Ring, which I had worse performance on Elden Ring once the patch came out. I remember playing Spider-Man 2 and I saw all these complaints and I was like, I don't know what this must just be the internet. And then I played it.
I was confused too.
That was, I think we talked pretty quick. I was like, oh yeah, because I tweeted and I think you responded as well. You're like, what in the hell is going on? And I'm all, it can't be that bad. It's that bad.
It was
the weirdest patch situation ever. So maybe they were trying to get performance back, and that's what caused all the issues. I have no clue. I don't know what's going on with the Elden Ring. They've had some good patches, some bad ones. I will just personally say that whenever it's a game like that, I notice those issues even more because it is a game where death is on the line. It's a game.
Sure,
and when a developer states, I'm going to make this DLC harder than the normal, or I'm going to make this thing, I am buying into that. I have no issue with that. I love the idea that I want a crunchy, hard game. But as somebody who's played those kind of games like Arma, which runs like hammered trash, no matter, I have a 4090 brand new AMD, 64 gigs of RAM, and Arma above 40 FPS is it's a pipe dream if you have any kind of draw distance. Exactly. And so I wish I think FromSoft did a great job on introducing people to Dark Souls in a way that was embraced many more fans. They said, you're not going to be filtered down this one jackass with a spear that you have to kill. You can jump on your horse and go over here. You can do this. But at the same time, the performance issues are noticeable, and they should be held accountable. And I'll fucking tell you, I don't care if people get mad. Like, that's the least of my worries. I have to deal with real life. So I'm going to tell you in a review. John said it. I've seen him talk about it. I've seen other people talk about it. I think they don't get a pass from people who cover, but I do think that they will get a pass from fans who just, they're like us, they love it, but it's not their job to give it a pass or not. It's not a normal fan's job to give it a pass. It's okay if they do, I guess, is what I'm saying.
There's also different levels of tolerance, and the problems are different depending on the platform. Like the PC version, I think, is actually the worst because of all of its stuttering issues, and it feels very unpolished. On consoles, you're basically just looking at kind of an unstable frame rate that often dips into the 40s and 50s. And I think there's just a lot of people that don't honestly care about that.
Yeah.
They don't notice, don't care. It doesn't affect them. So they're just like, whatever. And honestly, with the Xbox version on a VRR screen, it's not even that big of a problem. It runs, it feels pretty consistent. That's how I played it. I think that Xbox was VRR or PS4 version on PS5. That's the two best ways to play Elden Ring. Because you can actually get
though. Wait, what?
Framed.
Yeah, no, it's true. I don't know why.
It is 100% true.
PS4, it doesn't make any sense. I have no clue.
Yeah, the PS4 version is the smoothest way for sure. Like that, it's just 100% lock 60 across the board.
So weird.
All you lose is a little bit of foliage detail and a slightly lower resolution, and that's about it. It otherwise looks about the same, and it just runs flawlessly.
And I don't give a shit if the fern looks good if I'm being slashed by a giant creature.
Exactly what I was going to say.
I would rather have it locked frame rate.
Lose a few plants and trade for a perfect frame rate. That's basically what it is.
I didn't see the plants anyway. I'll be honest with you.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, I did when I was face down in them. You know, the first time I was playing, and I was like, "Oh yeah, okay, this is still Dark Souls. It looks different, and it delivers different, but still a great game." But I just want to point out that if you're talking to a friend and that friend is like, I didn't notice, I don't know. I do think that people, and I've joked about this with on tweet. I've even like called out Digital Foundry, I've called out IGN, I've called out people who cover games. Sometimes we get pixel peeping, shadow squinting, where we're like everybody's peering at the smallest little pixel on a screen. There's a difference between an analysis of the performance of a game than there is the game. So yes, you see videos, but if you're not bothered by it or your friend isn't,
I mean,
it's
the thing is with Elden Ring, it was so good that even though we kind of tore it apart on a technical level, it was still my favorite game that year.
Yeah.
So like it didn't. So that when people see us pixel peeping like that, sometimes that's not really an indictment. It's just an educational thing. Like here's what's going on. Here's what we've observed. It's not commentary on how much we like the game.
Yeah. I do the same thing. I mean, I many times I'll have to say, despite the performance.
Exactly. It's like, despite these issues, it's still awesome.
This is still a blast. Legend of Zelda, by the way. That I had a lot of issues with this, the last Legend of Zelda game, and they weren't, shimmering. There was all kinds, it's sharp as hell sometimes. I swear to God, that game can cut you on its pixels, but it was still absolutely enjoyable to me. It was it passed beyond any technical issues I may have or the inadequacy of the Switch hardware-wise now. But
it's more like it's still ambitious though to do a large-scale game with that amount of physics interactions and like this sort of like procedural systems. Like this good. Like wood catches fire, grass burns from it. Water puts out fire. You can cut down trees and wood and like put all these things together, and the way all those systems interplaying is really, really cool. And it's amazing that it works on the Switch. And it's also a bummer that it feels like that was a type of game that you would have seen in like about 2008, 2009.
Yeah.
That type of idea was really popular. And then it just kind of went away and everybody got away from these like, large scale interactions.
I love the experimentation in that game. I thought I was all smart in my review. I was like, hey, look, I put some fans on a piece of wood and I flew around. And then I saw people's creations in my own Discord. There's only like 1,000 people in there. And I was all, I need to stop reviewing because I thought I was all special in my ideas.
Oh, I know.
And those guys
that stuff was nuts.
The only thing I was happy about is I built a square out of wood and I would trap enemies in it by looping it over their head. And I was like, dude, this is awesome. I can do this.
Yeah.
But then I saw people just creating the craziest crap. And I was like, you know what? 30 FPS, little janky. I don't really care. That's the kind of it's a thing for them. I don't want every game to be that way. But the fact that they did it and just said, yeah, it's going to be a little janky. That's, to me, well worth it. Because other companies who then can deliver higher FPS or what have you can look at that and go, oh, shit, that's a good idea. Like, maybe we should try that on a, Switch 2 one day, whenever we get a Switch 2. I don't know if we will. I feel like we're never getting one. Next question up is Brashik says, in keeping with last week's burger question, ACG, what's your favorite pizza? And when are we getting the ACG barbecue podcast? Well, as you know, we don't eat during the podcast. That's gross. You do not log in to watch me masticate. But what's your favorite pizzas? Anybody a big pizza fan here?
I mean, yeah, of course.
Always
favorite?
pepperoni. Right.
Are we talking just toppings?
I think he's talking about pizza places. Because last week we had a huge discussion on what companies, and we banned some people from our podcast because they didn't agree with me. I'm just joking. No, like, what's your best company? What's somebody that will do a good pizza? Andrew, Corey, you got any?
There's a little by the slice place near my house that has a meatball pizza that is fantastic.
Half slice meatballs or full on? Here's a meatball on your damn pizza.
Half sliced.
Awesome.
Yeah,
so it can rest.
Yeah.
Are we talking deep dish or thin Italian? What's that?
Thin Italian.
Yeah.
Crispy crust.
Yep.
Now I'm gonna get hungry.
It's nice.
Andrew, are you a pizza fan? Oh, you're muted.
You're muted.
He's muted.
Yeah.
There we go.
There's a shop in my town. It's pretty recent. It's about a year. I don't know if it'll last, but the guy doesn't have a phone number and he doesn't have a website. You have to walk in. You can't pre-order a pie. He has no space to sit down.
Okay.
It's so confusing in a modern sense. You're like, why wouldn't you give us any amenities?
The Dark Souls of pizza.
Yeah, you're like, you just walk in, you stand here, you tell me. But the pizza's really good. It's really thin crust, really crispy. It's delicious. So it's working as busy when you go in there, but you have no idea what you're going to get.
It's part of the marketing. It's hard to get.
Yeah, exactly. I guess I don't know. It's like, please just
How'd
let
you
us
wait a
call
minute?
you.
I always want to know. Then I always ask this question: how did you find it then? If
Brother-in-law heard about it. He works at a restaurant
Gotcha.
nearby. He heard about it from somebody, and then we all started trying to get in there and get some slices.
Oh, okay, all right. Johnny,
Sweet.
There's a local place that does like square pizzas,
Ooh,
and you
yeah.
buy them by the meter. It's weird, but it's
By
an
the
amazing
meter?
idea.
What the
Dude, yeah. You can even get a long pizza that's like, 1 meter, right? But you can kind of get half. It's a big square. And I don't know why.
Back to the 90s.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't,
Yeah, seriously.
there's something about reinventing the wheel, but the square is actually a great shape for a pizza because you can get, the clean corners. You get big slices. Yeah, it's fantastic, man.
But that has slices in the
Wow.
middle that have no crust, though.
No. No, in the middle? No.
yeah. 'cause
Oh, you
there's-
mean if you get the big
yeah,
one?
if you
Like
get the big one,
right,
you got
isn't that
slices
like
in the
this-
middle with no crust.
I hadn't thought of that because I get
Rectangle slices. Make them long.
Yeah, because I get a square, so it's
Okay.
all like
Okay, it's small enough
perfectly.
to be. Yeah, okay.
But I see what you mean. Yeah, if you don't have a crust,
That's like
a
the
bit.
extreme version of pizza. That's like the Mountain Dew extreme
Dude.
version to have like a meter. I don't know why a meter
yeah.
sounds huge. I got to do the translation first. But that seems,
yeah,
when you
that's-
say a meter, my brain is like, that's a lot of pizza for a
Yeah.
little Johnny.
That-
Like you're
I mean,
out there
dude,
like,
like
big.
Fair
two
enough.
meters is a person. I'm 196, so
That's
imagine like half a
amazing.
person.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Yeah, it's
That's a lot of
Pizza
pizza.
up to your waist.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
man. If you can eat it all, you get it free. What about you, John?
There's a couple. There's a place in Frankfurt around here called Calabrizella that makes really good Italian style pizza that I really, really love. They have some really cool options there.
Like different toppings.
Yeah, the toppings. It's more like the quality of their crusted ingredients just really stands out. And it's just like they do this one that I love. It's like it doesn't even use sauce. It's like Parmesan cheese, ricotta, the kind of lettuce on there. It's like some nice spicy peppers on there as well, and then like prosciutto kind of ham on there as well, which is really great crust, and it's just awesome.
Damn.
And
I
then
shouldn't
there's
have read
a-
this question.
yeah.
I'm
Now
hungry.
we're
Now
hungry.
we're all
Every
hungry.
podcast.
Yeah,
It's so
every-
stupid. I
literally
did this
everyone.
again. I read it early. Go ahead, John. Continue.
And then back in Cincinnati, where I'm from, I really liked Dewey's Pizza,
Okay, yeah,
which
I know
is
Dewey's.
kind of a chain, right? And like they do this fantastic meatball pizza, and also the one with like the goat cheese and the fig and everything on there is really unique.
Fig. That's interesting. I hadn't
It's
heard.
so freaking good. And I'm not even a big fan of figs, but like in this case with that cheese and fig combination, it's just awesome.
Oh, some
Contrast.
basalt
Nice
or
contrast.
something.
Yeah, it's got
that's
some
good.
basalt
Yeah.
glaze on it,
Yeah, exactly that.
All right.
It's
Unlike
darn
these
good.
guys with their pinky up talking about their fig pizza, I like pepperoni. Abby's just a chain.
Pepperoni is.
I'm-
you
I-
can't
yeah,
Can't
I
go wrong
definitely-
with it though.
If somebody tries
Can't.
to tell me, "Hey man, let's put some special shit on the pizza," I'm like, something's wrong. I just want the most basic pizza. I'm definitely not an experimenter for food, despite my look. You would think that's all I'm doing, but I'm definitely not. And I just the idea of that. We had a friend who ordered, and I hate him for this. Andy, if you're listening, I hate you as a person for this. He got a pizza and it had shrimp on it, and as somebody who grew up in a fish plant, my dad owned a fish plant. The idea of shrimp on a pizza is just it is revolting. And he's just chewing through this pizza, and they've got all these special toppings, and I'm there with my little poor man pepperoni, and I'm just happy.
See,
as a
you're
clam.
not a fan of Japanese pizzas, then I guess.
I am not. And a lot of the guys on the podcast, like Reg and Absy, both, as well as Silver, they're all very big food experimenters, and I'm the guy who's like, a piece of cheese and a piece of meat will get me through the day. And
Joe six pack
yeah,
for the pizza.
it really is, man. It's such a dichotomy. That's why I love doing the international podcast, because I have people from everywhere, and they always
Man
have
of the
these
people.
awesome ideas. But I'm just like, man, if we ever went out and did stuff, I would have such a hard time, because one place that I think it was Absy went to, they just didn't have normal pizza. It was one of those places that was like, you
couldn't
get
even
a
order
normal pizza.
Yeah, you could.
And I was just like, well, maybe I'd go there to lose weight, but
I think for pizzas, it's less is more when
I
it
think
comes
so.
to the toppings.
I like it.
I don't know about you guys, but if you got like 5 toppings, you need to balance the pizza on the on the edge of a knife.
Yeah, any food that's dangerous to eat,
What are we
I'm
doing,
okay
guys?
to pass by. I don't want my beard burning me. Good
Man,
question,
the thing
though,
that,
Brashik. Go
the
ahead.
funny thing about that just occurred to me when I first moved to Germany. All the pizzas called pizza pepperoni is referring to the actual like hot pepper, like a bell pepper
Oh,
pepperoni.
I gotcha.
If you want a pepperoni pizza, as you're talking, you got to get a pizza salami.
Salami, yeah.
Oh yeah, wow.
So that's the distinction.
Uh-oh.
First time I ordered that, I was like, wait, what the heck?
Dude, I'm seeing in our chat, this happens every time with pizza discussion. They devolved into the is pineapple or no? Pineapple or no? By the way, somebody asked me if Abzi is going to come back on. Fridays, he won't be a regular guest. I'm sure he'll come occasionally. And then Wednesday, whenever we get that podcast set up, he will come. I talked to him a couple days ago, doing really well, super busy with his new job. But he was in Egypt? No, he was in
Italy.
No, he moved away from Canada.
Oh, you
to
mean
the Middle
living?
East.
Yeah.
But he was like, I think it's midnight right now for him, and that was too late on a Friday for a young kid to be giving up his Fridays to talk to a bunch of nerds instead of dating or doing his normal stuff. So yeah, he'll be back on Wednesdays whenever we get that situated. So asking some more questions to these guys before we move on to a question for John about emulation. I had a question for him about hardware and software real quick, but I was asked a bunch of questions. We got some in the Patreon, and I'm going to get through these really quick because some I haven't asked or they've been asked for me, and I just want to get those because we have guests. Scat says, thoughts on Xbox Game Pass Rise? We're done with that. We covered that. Banter, 7-year patron, says, panel, favorite piece of hardware you have from any hobby? So whether it be D&D, Airsoft, video games, whatever a hobby is. And, you know, because video games might be your hobby as well, not just your job. Is there a favorite piece of hardware you have related to your hobby?
I have a helicopter. I really like a model helicopter.
Oh, I thought you were talking like you had a real helicopter for a
That's
second.
a hobby, by the way. That's a big hobby. That's
I
know.
hobby.
It's like, dude, how much are you guys making?
Like,
we're
we
still
buy
selling.
helicopters.
We're still selling our old games. They're doing well. That's why we patch them. You know what are we talking? Drone style or like an old style 110 model for the helicopter?
It's an aerobatic 700 series, so it is one blade disc that's about 4 feet, 4.5 feet across. So it's not a quadcopter. It can fly upside down. I've got it up to about 120 miles an hour, so it can move. It can move really fast.
What's that battery take? What is that, a LiPo? Like, what's the size of the battery?
12-cell LiPo.
Oh, damn. Okay.
So it's bigger than my chainsaw.
Yeah.
The battery's quite a bit bigger than my chainsaw battery. So
yeah, I have an A10 Warthog that's the older style with
okay,
one
cool.
And well, I had it. It lasted one flight. The LiPo discharger slipped off and it went into the sky and exploded in a fiery rain. The LiPo LiPos are great. They're amazing batteries, but if they discharge at the wrong cell rate, we have it with Airsoft, it'll just burn up.
Tragic.
So this A10, I was with my wife and I felt like a kid. I was like, this is the greatest moment of my boom. And the wings came off and it just lit on fire over the high school field. And I just watched it fall. And my wife looked at me. She knows not to like bring it up. She just looked at me and I was like, yeah, okay, well, that was that. And we just packed it up. But I love those RC things. They're awesome regardless. Are you not racing it? Sorry. Are you practicing with it so that when you go back, because it's not like a drone, so no safety mechanisms, I'm assuming, none of the AI. Right. So are you practicing with it so that you're up to sort of the, you know, like your instincts for how to fly it? Do you fly it often?
Yeah, I fly pretty often. There's a type of competition called F3C, which is like precision flying. So it's like flying at a set height and doing certain maneuvers in a certain amount of time.
That's awesome.
So I've been practicing for that. It's kind of casual, but it's a fun way to measure yourself in something that doesn't have a lot of like, you didn't crash, so like good job.
Yeah,
you didn't crash it. Thumbs up. But F3C gives you like a progression to work through.
Is it a Bell? What did you say the helicopter was? What's the brand of helicopter?
It's an Align T-Rex.
Align T-Rex. I'll have to look that up. I've heard of that one.
I'll grab it for you if you want.
Yeah, could you please? Can you for sure? I would love to see that. Andrew, what do you got? What's a hobby? Some bit of hardware.
Most of my digital stuff is about gaming. So for me, I I used to do a lot of mobile gaming and gave that up. And Steam Deck is probably like the biggest gadget. Oh shit, that thing's
Damn.
That thing is monstrous, by the way.
that blade is
Yeah.
huge.
Oh,
Dude, that,
Hell
by
yeah.
the way, that is a person killer. That is a hitman
Yeah.
weapon in a video game. That's Corey, I was saying that's a hitman weapon in a video game. You could easily kill somebody with those blades, man.
Oh yeah, you could. You wouldn't want to fly it into yourself. That would be a tragedy.
ooh.
Andrew, your Steam Deck
Man,
is
dude.
probably your hardware.
Yeah, for the moment, for sure. Spend a lot of time on it right now. Enjoying it. It's cool to go back. Like I never had a Switch, so gave up mobile gaming like on a phone just from the form factor and stuff like
Mhm.
many years ago. So it's nice to have something that can be on the move again.
Yeah. What about you, John? You got anything?
I'd probably, I mean, gaming related still, but probably my CRT collection.
Ah.
Oh wow.
Collection.
Okay.
That's a nerd right there. Fellow
I've got
nerd.
I've got 10 CRTs in this house.
Holy.
And all in
So-
working condition, or
Oh,
some
yeah,
of
all
them
working.
are-
I've
Oh,
got-
yeah, I'm sure
hold
they
on.
work.
I got like 6 PVMs from Sony, a BVM from Sony, 3 CRT monitors, and including the FW900, the widescreen Sony 24-inch monitor, and then the Bang & Olufsen B01, which on its motorized stand, and I love
Do you
them.
play stuff on them, John, or
all
is
the
it more
time,
just
all the
collect-
time.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, I use them regularly. In this room, I have 2, and I use them both for different things. Upstairs, I actually have 2 side by side, one in vertical mode, Tate, and the other in horizontal for like using Mister and arcade boards.
That's crazy.
So I can play vertical shooters on there. And then in the other room, I have the retro PC set up, and then another stack of retro consoles with more monitors, and then the FW900 with the Xbox 360 and PS3 on
Wow.
it. They're all ready to go.
That
And then I
is
got a
so
couple of little
awesome.
9-inch ones that with a carry handle that I don't play on those much, but I use them sometimes as B-roll in videos to like shoot off of those little CRTs because they look cool.
How does
Oh, you like record them. You play
film
something on
them.
it and then
I
film
fi-
it.
I
Yeah.
film the CRT being used because like seeing the gadget in the video is part of it's a look and it's an aesthetic. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
getting the scan lines, getting that boxy design of the unit itself, putting some fancy lights around it, you can make that look cool in a video.
Oh yeah.
So I like to
Dude,
shoot
yeah,
my
it's-
CRTs.
You do.
in
I've seen
videos.
some of your videos on there. You do very good at like capturing some of that stuff in your lighting in your videos. Always really well.
So yeah,
done.
I love my CRTs.
Yeah,
What about-
you can't
That's
replace the
cool.
lines, the effect of
Nah, yeah, you got to capture all that.
it's-
I mean, you can fake it and do it
You
all
can
right,
fake it,
but
yeah.
there's something about filming it that gives it that real.
authentic.
It really gives it that
Yeah.
authentic look, especially because
Cozy.
also different CRTs have different properties on the screen, right? Depending on whether it's a shadow mask or like a Trinitron with a slot mask and the different things like that.
I'm gonna keep nodding
It's,
like I know what the fuck you're talking about, but I have
It's
no
all right,
clue
man.
what half of those mean.
I am so deep into that
You
world,
are
and I have.
That's amazing. What about you, Johnny? You got what you?
For me,
probably
it's
guitar.
got to be, this American
Oh shit!
Strat. It's absolutely beautiful, with the bright neck. Yeah, it's just an amazing
That's
piece
hot.
of craftsmanship.
Mine would be. I have a lot of hobbies.
Soft.
Yeah,
Maybe.
Yeah, I've got a lot of. I'm trying to think of one favorite. I do have a signed by Michael Haig Ryan werewolf D&D game RPG, pen and paper RPG that he signed.
Oh.
Who's the creator? It's probably something like that. Or Frank Franzetta signed an art book that I have before he signed it before I was even probably born because it was years ago. But that's a collector's edition. Probably something with art. I'm sort of an art nerd when it comes to
nice.
especially fantasy stuff, like old Conan art. I'm trying because that sort of or old Flash Gordon art. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. No, I'm pretty boring in that side. I have a lot of hobbies, but I don't collect one specific thing because I'm very utilitarian. I don't want to spend a ton. So I usually like if I do have airsoft guns, it's never the most expensive. It's like, can I get 5 friends over to play for a cheap amount of, and so I buy those. So it's never really like the highfalutin kind of stuff. And certainly my wife would freak out if I had another collection of CRTs. My wife would be, we don't
This
have
is
enough
interesting.
room. It's
I feel like based on what everybody just said right now, we could have guessed everybody's favorite type of pizza.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
I mean,
You know, with what you just said there, I'm like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, of course, he's a pepperoni pizza man. Of course.
yeah, utilitarian. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it's true. As long as nobody says seafood, we're all fine, and I'm not going to have an issue. Next up, also Johnny, favorite guitar pick brand.
Whoa.
Tortex. Don't know if I have some over here.
What's the brand called? Cortex?
Tortex, like turtle.
Tortex.
It's from Dunlop.
Oh,
So
gotcha.
they look like this. I'm not gonna be able to focus on it with my camera, but yeah, they're very common. But for me, yeah, nothing beats those. They got it hands down. They use a weird material that's like branded, I think, and it feels good.
Yeah,
Keep
just
it simple.
like once
know,
you got it,
the
you were
main
like, this
thing is-
feels right, kind of thing.
Yeah, but the main thing is some sound very plasticky.
Mhm.
The sound of the pick on the string itself kind of sounds like you're hammering with a plastic on it. That's the main thing why these, I think, sound really
Sound
good.
too harsh for you. They were asking Silver the beginning of any movie. I'll answer for Silver. He would state, well, there's so many, which is Silver's beginning to every answer, where he never wants to give a specific answer. I'll
True.
guess that Silver's is probably something straight up classic, like,
Oh, yeah. Was the question like best movie?
favorite beginning to a
for
movie for Silver.
beginning.
Yeah. Karak, how goes the guitar practice? I know in Discord you said you picked it back up along with piano. It goes about as well as you would assume. I got reviews for codes, so I jumped back into games, so I haven't really got to play. And all I know is if you have a bad back and you pick up guitar, you better sit right because you're going to find out right away. And I did
Oh,
within
yeah.
one day of practice. I was like, oh, back's killing me. Next one up, Richter Scale says, day one patron here. Been here since the beginning and will be until the end. Love Fest out of the way. A question to Karak and anyone else if you have any answers. What is the one thing you felt when you started your current creative journey that has changed as you have continued? So as you guys were creating games, Corey and Andrew, was there I love to myth bust. This is like one of my favorite things. Whether it be like, oh, you know, video game trailers are there to deceive, you know, whatever it may be. Is there something as gamers or as game developers that you guys it really changed? You maybe went into it thinking one thing and now after, you know, 7 to 10 years, you guys are like, dude, this is definitely not what we thought it was. Maybe get rich as a game developer. Maybe that's the answer.
Where'd those helicopters at?
Yeah,
bro?
where those-
Yeah.
Come on,
yeah.
John Carmack. I thought we were all going to get Lambos. What is there anything that, you know, it could be anything. Maybe a company is better to work with than you thought, or so, you know, like something business wise. Anything that's popped up?
One thing that pops up to me is what Corey and I both left, like I don't know, software jobs in the enterprise software
Sure.
industry. So working with like big software companies doing big expensive software deployments. And one thing for me, when we were able to finally leave our full-time jobs in 2013, I think at the time, Corey, we were selling games for like $1 to $3. We were
Yeah.
like only a mobile. And so I remember like being super excited that I would never sell anything more than $10 again. I was like, well, how mad can somebody get if they only gave you $3, you know? So, and well, now Cyberknights is $30. So I'm like, okay, you can get mad. Like that's legitimate. So that's interesting to me that we have just grown and changed what we're doing so much. And that was something I was super looking forward to, leaving that world.
And you found yourself not necessarily negatively entering it, but you found yourself maybe just assuming that, or not assuming, but realizing that price isn't so bad, I guess, or...
Well, it's good for us to be able to, you know, fund bigger and more ambitious projects. And we're delivering games that demand it, that kind of a price tag like that.
Yeah.
I think it came from a place of being stressed about like, in the world we were both leaving, like, you know, you'd get a customer and they'd be like $300,000 worth of software or something.
Sure.
You know, it'd be like a big, and if they weren't happy with the deployment and like it's just, I didn't like it very much.
Yeah.
It was too much money. So it'd be like, $1 sounds like, well, we just sell, you know, instead of
Refreshing.
300, we'll just like sell 300,000 of these $1 things and we'll buy our helicopters.
Yeah.
But
that's awesome. What about you, Corey?
Very crappy helicopters, but you know, things have changed for us a bit in that I think we are trying to reach a broader audience than we were at the beginning. I would say for probably the first 6 or 7 years, I was just like, no tutorials. If people want to play the game, they will figure it out. I'm just going to put the numbers on the screen and change the numbers when they need to change. And the user, if they care enough, they'll figure the numbers out. So we went through a long period of our games where like there was no tutorial. It was just like, here is the screen. Would you like to play? Which works sometimes, sometimes it doesn't work. We've really changed our thoughts on that. Now we build tutorials in from the ground floor. I wouldn't say I love them, but I understand that they let more people in the door. They let more people enjoy the game. There are people that hate them and always skip them. They're like, I don't need a tutorial. Played XCOM for 20 years. Come on, boys. And then there's other people that are like, I don't really like to play games unless I have a chance to get a tutorial. I want somebody to explain the mechanics to me. So I think, my opinion about that has changed somewhat in that I appreciate the insights of those other types of players. And I think being able to welcome lots of different people into your game is good.
Very cool. What about you, John? Anything that's changed since you've that you thought one thing and now you're like, not so much?
It was weird because, before DF, I worked in the US for an automotive company doing software development. And then I left the US, came to Europe, left that job and joined DF. So it was like a second chapter. And I think at first, it felt like a more positive space in 2013. But I feel like just discourse around games has become kind of like really not great in a lot of ways. Like people get very angry about things now in a way that's just not fun anymore, and that kind of sucks. So I mean, there's still plenty of people to have great conversation with, but I kind of miss the old message board days, in fact. And just I feel like the way social media is gone, it's just not as enjoyable to talk about things anymore. Because I like to sometimes say bold things, and it's not necessarily to wind people up. It's just to be blunt. Like, here's what I think. Bam. And having a disagreement argument is really fun, but you don't get that as much anymore because it's not so much disagreement. It's people getting nasty about it.
Yeah.
And that is not fun. So I feel like that has changed a lot. I also just think for me personally, it's some of the luster is gone. Because you cover this stuff for so long that it's like there was a magic of new releases, new stuff, and it's just not there anymore. Not in the same way. Like to some degree, I still get it, but it's not at that same level. And I find myself often going back to, the stuff I enjoy a lot is often smaller indie stuff and retro games more often than not. So just and that whole Simpsons thing about one day what you think is cool will become the old thing, and then the new thing comes in, and like a lot of the popular stuff just it's not for me. So I think I reached that point.
Yeah.
And I've accepted it. It's all right. I don't care.
Yeah.
And I see what other people are doing. It's like, yeah, exactly right. It's just like that's cool. I have my own little corner here. Just gonna do my thing.
Me and my CRTs.
Yeah, bring me more CRTs.
If there's a zombie apocalypse, I'll just stack those things in front of the windows.
They ain't
be all right. They ain't getting through those.
What about you, Johnny? Anything that's changed?
I think the one thing, and I have been involved with games directly, but I started software engineering, working as software engineer 10 years ago, pretty much. It's going to be 11 at the end of the year. And the one thing that I used to think that really smart people have it all figured out. They don't really make mistakes, and they always have a clear plan, and stuff goes according to their plans. And what I discovered now working with people who are really smart, every day I talk to people who are, there's always someone smarter in the room, and yet you see that even people at the very high level, everybody's just having a crack, really. Sure, they have better resources, they know how to look up information, and they get stuff right on average more than most people. But you still see them, make mistakes. They're just people. They're again, everybody's having a crack, and it's perfectly fine to say, I actually don't know the answer to that, because, and I found that those people feel like, the smart people feel okay saying that, because they're not like out there trying to prove something. So I've come to really value that honesty from people when they come out and say, you know what, I was wrong about that. I've changed my mind about that. Or, I got that wrong. The plan didn't. So
we used to joke that once a senior software engineer starts admitting that they made mistakes, it's time to promote them to manager.
Yeah.
It's a good maturity signal, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. You're like, I'm able to admit that I don't know everything about everything right now. I'm like, okay, you're ready for the next phase of your career.
I would say mine is that I've always valued personal friendships, physical ones, whether it be co-op games, people coming over playing Halo and stuff. And the fact is that I know Johnny as well, and I probably talk to Johnny more than I do some of my physical friends, people who live near me. And that's for the international podcast. That's why we put it together, was because we had people from all over, all corners of the earth, Middle East to, London, that kind of stuff, Australia. And I think I've learned that, I always knew it, but there was no real vehicle for all this kind of communication. Because when I grew up, it was writing a letter to a person in China, and they wrote a letter back, and it takes 6 weeks. When you're a kid writing your best friend letters in high school or in middle school. Now the instant communication has let me learn things. I think that's how we started this podcast, was when I found out the difference in price points. I think it was Russia Steam one day. Somebody was telling me the prices on Steam, and I was like, wait, what? It's that? And then we started talking. We were like, let's just get a podcast together with people out of the blue from so I can understand where you're coming from when I say it's $60 in America. And they're like, bitch, it ain't 60 over here. And you get this cool mixture of data and information that is, and friendships that they're not contained to the physical, which is awesome. And that's a big bonus. That's something I didn't think I would trust people that I didn't know physically, probably because I honestly did think, hey, if that person does something wrong, I can throttle them, or I can come to their house, I can be like, dude, what are you doing? You messed up. But it's all digital now. And I trust some people I've met digitally more than anybody I've ever known in real life. And I think that that's probably been the best. It's been hugely positive. I would also say I slightly agree with John in that that magic at times, I have found it slightly harder to capture. I think game console releases still are, console releases. When a new console comes out, the new tech and the new discoveries are there. I've had to directly shift my excitement. It's sort of like John was saying, maybe smaller titles. I've found that. I've also found huge excitement in the fact that music matters. Because when I started as a reviewer and was covering music, there were people talking about OSTs, but nobody ever rated it in reviews. I was like, this is weird. I don't mean you have to say it's bad music, because that's personal, but you could say, is the mixing okay in this game? Does this 3D game mixing help you understand where an enemy is off screen? Nobody was covering that, and now a bunch of people do. And I don't care if that was what I started as. I can move on. I can find something else. The fact that more people cover it, the fact that we can sit here and somebody can say, dude, this title screen is some of the best music I've ever heard in my life. And it used to just be the bands releasing a CD or something. Now it's like a video game gets talked about. I can talk about Justin Bell or Elijah Chuck at Sony or Austin Wintory at the same time somebody else is talking about some band they like. And I don't feel uncomfortable with that discussion. That to me is magic. I think composers have been ignored for 20 years. I mean, other than the OST discussion.
Dude, it's huge to me. That kind of stuff.
Dude, music matters. Sound matters.
Dude, it's so important.
It is.
Like, yeah, that is like, that makes up such a huge percentage of whether I really enjoy something or not.
Yep.
A great game with great music versus a great game, a slightly better game with bad music. I'll take the great game with great music over that any day.
Yep. And that moment when you come out and the music stinger hits or what have you, and doesn't spoil it, because we've seen games that accidentally play the music too early, and you're like, oh, there's a boss here, and you're all, I wish you wouldn't have told me that audibly. But that ability to hit is fantastic. And I can tell you there's some games I'm covering right now that don't have the greatest, and it's noticeable. I'll be talking about it. It's so awesome to see good ones.
Ace Combat 7 just came out on Switch, and that just reminded me how great the sound design is in that game. That final mission with that last track they composed and the way the sound and the whole mission plays out, it's awe-inspiring. It's one of those moments you're like, man, this could only happen in a game.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the interaction is so... Dude, when a game hits the interaction with the game player, and they do it, whether it be diegetic music, I'm not really talking about that, but when like the beat is going with your run, or that new enemy and a new boss, and you're just like, holy shit, this is me. And that situation can be different than what Corey has, or different than what Johnny has. Like, and that's the cool thing. As long as it hits well for everybody, of course, you always hope that. But yeah, dude, so good. Thank you very much for those questions. I appreciate it. Last one, and then we'll move on and talk. I want to ask these guys another couple questions. Serentosis. I don't know what that means. I joined the patron.
Sounds like serotonin.
It does. But halitosis of the serotonin. I joined the patron. Didn't know how much the Discord would honestly improve my life through COVID, and now and up until now, it's been a hilarious place to share games, discuss titles, and other than the rare outlier. It's an amazing place. What made you choose Discord so early, Karak, versus the other ways to push connection? So let me push this onto our guests, because they're huge as well into Discord. I think Discord is another huge change. I never thought, thank God Reg told me I should do Discord for patrons, because it's changed my life too. What about you guys? I know you guys are always in there. You guys have talked about this. Like, how do you find yourselves ever getting... How about this? Let's talk about it in a positive way. I was going to say something. When you guys are using Discord and stuff, do you find yourselves liking it more than, let's say, an email or an F10 report? Do you guys like that back and forth? How do you
100%.
utilize, how do you utilize all of this across the realm? Like, do you guys use Discord as much as you use Steam forums and feedbacks?
I mean, a big thing for us is that we've migrated, like, we pretty quickly, actually. I think we ended up really using Discord as our business hub for our team, for everybody involved, for all of our partners that we work with. They get in onto our Discord server, and that we get private channels, and there's voice channels. And so, like, everything that we're doing, and we pin links, and like, it's all happening there in Discord, which is really nice, because then we're natively like, oh, my channel just lit up about somebody showing off the latest thing they did in crafting, like I pop in there, and so you're kind of like, that's where you live, and then the players are just like one click away, which is really nice, because it keeps you close to them. But if you want something from Corey or from anybody on the team, you go there, which is really nice. And the other stuff, honestly, the rest of it, like Steam forum, for example, feels like monitoring. Like, you have to watch it. It's like, sorry, really got hung up on that one. Like, we're going there to check, like, has anybody posted? And so we're watching it, and we're very interactive there. We're there, but like, Discord is just sort of like, we're natively there all the time, because that's where we work. So that's, I think, a big part of what keeps us close to it. And I don't know how we ever used to do it. Google Chat? Ugh.
Or Slack,
like something.
Well,
Well, we never. Yeah, I don't know what we used to do.
Mercy.
Yeah. I mean, Discord is right. Like, that's like
ICQ. What's your ICQ number? Yeah, it is. Well, did you know Discord's built on Xfire? I wasn't aware of that. Discord is Xfire's base, and what's weird is I used Xfire and then jumped to Discord. And Xfire is my favorite of the IRQs. The back and forth. But it also launched titles and did all this stuff. And one day we were looking up and found out that it was built on Xfire, which stunned me. Corey, what about you? Same thing for Discord?
Yeah, I really like Discord. I found I was using it a little bit for just like gaming stuff with real life friends before we started using it business first. I really like Discord. I built a lot of bots on it, so as a software engineer, it's a pretty cool platform to work with. And it's definitely improved our process. Having one central place, it's basically like Slack in terms of how you'd integrate it for an enterprise, but we just use Discord instead. So it's nice. Like, we have a channel. When a build gets done, it sends a message to the channel. When like a deployment's finished, we get a message. So all of our software updates that go through Discord too.
Did you find? Did you go to it organically, or did somebody ask you for Discord, or did you guys just? Were you like, oh, now that we're doing a PC release or we're doing PC releases, we should go to Discord? Do you remember how you switched?
Yeah, I convinced Andrew. Andrew said we didn't need a Discord server.
Oh,
Yeah, what?
Andrew.
Tell me the truth, Andrew. Then tell me what really happened. Fill me in.
Bullshit. This is the legend within the echo chamber of Corey's head. Some people on our forum suggested that we go out, and we ended up there. Corey did create the server. I'll give him credit. He was the first one to join. He also created the forum. I didn't fight and scream and kick for a year and a half, but I didn't want to go to Discord.
Is that the legend that's grown or something?
No, it's just in his head. But it is an interesting thing. I would say Steam forum is really nice. Discord, I'd love to see Discord growing and changing because it helps. Like some of the stuff that they're adding is like, why? What are you guys doing? Like,
yeah.
I know you're just doing this for another community. It's not for us. But some of it has been really helpful for us. Like the pretty decent forum support that they've added recently is helpful. We have players, and there are certain types of conversations that are just not great for chats. It's just not, you need dedicated rooms to them. And so having that ability for players to make their own forum threads with a tag list and all this stuff, it's been awesome to see it grow in a way that recognizes that gaming is a huge part of their ecosystem and that they need to help us make cooler gaming servers, basically. So that's really cool, because when we left, our previous community hub was a forum. And it was, it's a big change. And we still, for years, I think finally after like 8 or 9 years, the forum is fully dead. There's a few people who go there occasionally. But like for a long time, there was a lot of activity still happening there because there was certain community members who like the slower pace of discussions. Which is now you can get that in Discord, which is really cool.
What about you, John? You guys are always in it, I'm assuming?
Yeah, I mean, we obviously have the Digital Foundry Discord that we run, which has been great. We've got a huge number of people there, and it's just awesome to interact with them directly because it's just fun, enjoyable chat. And then I'm in a bunch of other random Discords and spend a lot of time there, specifically in just a few. And then, it's just the individual connections with people. It's very easy and simple to message people and kind of keep those connections active all the time. Plus, the video and call features work extremely well.
Yeah.
A lot better than so many other programs. So like I usually want to do calls and stuff through Discord because it just works better that way. That's how we do our weekly show, DF Direct. We all just call each other through Discord.
Yeah,
I just go that way and it works great.
How did Discord? How did you guys split that off? Because it was forums as well for you guys before Discord, wasn't it? Or did they not have forums?
No. We Digital Foundry. Oh, there was Eurogamer.
Eurogamer
had forums.
Yeah.
Which we're tangentially part of them, right? We post on Eurogamer, but it's still kind of a separate thing. We opened our own Discord when we started our Patreon, like however many years ago, basically. And that it kind of grew from that.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool.
It's definitely hugely beneficial. I think Discord's one of the best things that I've ever found, especially when we were doing Dragon's Dogma, 30 people streaming at the same time. Discord servers handled it, which I'm not quite sure how, because I'm sure we weren't the only ones. And when big games come out, like Elden Ring, I'll go into another Discord and they'll have 50 people streaming. I'm a part of the Y-Files, which is a YouTuber who just does goofy, like conspiracy videos, but he's got a huge following. The Discord would just be like, you stream by and it feels like 1,000 people are in chat and then another 40 or 50 are streaming and it still works. And it's really nice. The only complaint I ever get is, it's too fast, especially our general, when people talk like I do, where I'm like, enter. No, I don't think so. Enter, blah, blah, blah. And people are like, holy crap, that's a lot of stuff to scroll up or scroll down. Other than that, it's replaced forums as a more protected space too. We charge for it, and people have asked me multiple times, why isn't it free? I can tell you, because it was free. And the disaster of free was not worth continuing, because you would have people that didn't feel invested in the community, and they would come
spoiling it for everyone else.
Just spoiling it for everybody else. And even though it's a small purchase price, it has hugely benefited the channel and people being able to talk, ask about game videos, ask about something, do the podcast things.
Yep,
I can see developers are doing it all the time. These guys have it every single new game I see. That's the only problem I can see happening in the future, is the continued fragmentation where every game's got a Discord. So I love it, but I also hate fragmentation on the internet. I hate it anywhere. And because I do like to be able to find that data via a search engine or something. That's the only problem I have with Discord, is a bit of fragmentation.
But at the same time, the idea that I can, join these guys' Discord maybe and talk about the game directly, like to the people making that's incredible. That's new in a way, like that wasn't there before.
Yeah,
I think that
it's incredible.
It fights the fragmentation that everybody's on Discord. Like that's such a nice thing.
True.
We buy assets from the Unity asset store, and we talk to composers, and like everybody's doing Discord at this point, and everybody has the same feeling that all of us are expressing this, which I have a thing that I support or rep, and I have to have a Discord for it, and I have to be somehow present. And if you show up in my Discord, you should be able to expect to get a hold of me or a team member or a bot that can put you in contact with me eventually. And so there's this awesome direct line. Like there's a bunch of stuff like lighting engine and ragdoll engine and stuff we've like worked with or needed help with people. And you can, maybe you have to talk to a bot for a minute, but then like an hour later, you get a direct chat line to somebody and be like, what is going on with this? It's really, instead of trying to figure out like Twitter for a minute there, they were like, maybe this will be like the support line of the internet, but this is so much nicer.
Somehow it became the trash bin.
Yeah,
I would say also with Discord, you guys are rare. I do want to point that out. And I get it from me that people are they're very surprised at YouTube creators in their own Discord, and I was not aware that everybody wasn't, because I find it to be the number one place I get information, and you guys as well. If you're in there and getting information, to me, I would love to see every developer do it. But I understand you guys are busy too, so you have to separate. But I think the groundswell of support from you guys being in there, there may be the occasional issue that pops up, but for the most part, people will remember that communication. And it's even happened with me where maybe after a year somebody's like, Karak joking about this isn't for me, and I'm like, hey, that's fine, but the positives I get out of it are incredibly high. And I think every dev should do it. I think every creator of any kind, like if you're an author, you should probably do it. It just feels like Discord's the one place that you can go, and the tools are available for people pretty easily. Like you just right click on somebody's name and you can figure out call. Well, I know what that means. Message, I know what that means. It's all right there. There's not these like Reddit where there's 1,000 bars everywhere, and somebody who's new to Reddit may go, man, I don't even know who I'm talking to. Is this the right person? Even Twitter is that way. But Discord's pretty much onomatopoeia as a design. You just go in, there's some obscure things, but for the most part, it works, and it works really well. Or as Todd would say, it just works.
Yep.
Yeah. Moving on from there, do you guys still have time? You guys know we do long podcasts. I want to make sure you still got time.
I got some time for a bit longer.
All right, because that's the question for John. Here we go. All right. No, not bad. Sorry.
Now we're trapped.
So here we go.
I'm getting worried now.
So emulators, ignoring the discussion around how you get your games and stuff. A lot of people have asked, and I saw you bring this up on your last DF where you were talking about you liked certain upscalers better than others. You were talking about the Auto SR. You were talking Bicubic. I think you were saying you really liked the look of that. So it came up in my Discord almost instantly when I started talking about it. People were like, well, what is the best setting? Now, my assumption is it's slightly different for each one, but people were quite taken by when you said that, because I think everybody thinks the newest, biggest ×8 is going to be the best looking for whatever you're doing. But you brought up that you actually liked bicubic upscaling ×2. You brought this up in your podcast.
Oh, I mean, the thing I was talking about recently was using an actual upscaling device.
So that was the other question: software versus hardware. What is the best way? Is it hardware currently? Is it a hardware device between your display?
There's multiple topics here kind of getting jumbled together. Emulation is a software thing in general, right? And obviously then scaling that is going to require a software solution. If you're trying to scale hardware, including modern hardware like a Switch, that's where you bring in a hardware solution. So the thing I was talking about most recently was the Switch. The Switch maxes out at 1080p, right?
Mm-hmm.
The problem is most TVs, most displays, when you run a signal lower than 4K into a 4K TV, by default, pretty much every single TV, with just a couple exceptions, they apply a sort of like a bilinear upscale blur to the image, right? So even though 1080p is exactly, if you go double the pixels in each direction, like a 4 times increase, it perfectly maps to 4K. They actually interpolate between the pixels, so everything becomes kind of blurry. But if you actually take that same signal and you just do a perfect nearest neighbor scale, so there's no interpolation at all, you put that in 4K, you get this ultra crisp image. And then what if you also interject some extra like digitally generated lines into the image designed to sort of like create the black space between the virtualized pixels?
Mm-hmm.
Now you can actually recreate the pixel grid look of like a 1080p display. You get more granular on that. If you're dealing with lower resolutions, you can actually like simulate things like the individual RGB elements or like the individual phosphor elements using masks to sort of apply that to the image. So you're kind of creating the effect of the small like multi-segment subpixels on a larger display. And this is the stuff I think is really neat in terms of bringing it forward. So with the Switch, then, like I use one of these scaling devices.
What was the name of it, by the way?
I actually have multiple, but the two I have the RetroTink 4K, which I use for analog stuff, and then I also have the Pixel Effects Morph, which I mounted behind my receiver there. And it basically has a toggle switch on it, so I just toggle it. And I have 3 outputs on my receiver. One of them always goes to that device. So if I turn that on, it'll just pipe whatever is coming from the AVR into that, and I just change the input of my TV. So now the Switch is going through that, and it sends out a perfect 4K image you can even do HDR injection to boost like the color brightness, and I use like black frame insertion with it to get smoother motion clarity. And you just end up with this ultra crisp image. So you send 480p, 720p, it doesn't matter. It'll do a perfect, super clean upscale with super sharp pixels. And then if you add in those masks, you can even recreate the appearance of a lower res panel. So it basically gets rid of all the interpolation nonsense that I think makes these games look worse than they actually should. And you'd be shocked at how good like a native 720p game looks when you use this approach. It looks awesome. And I mean, I'm using like a 77-inch OLED TV back there, the G4 from LG. That's a big screen for how close I sit. Switch games look great on there using this technique, when by default they would look just kind of blurry and not great.
Yeah. So of those two, money being no object, no worry even about much money, which one do you like, or what device?
The Tink 4K is significantly more expensive and more robust because it has like an insane amount of analog inputs, VGA, SCART, component, composite, S-video, and HDMI input. It's absolutely loaded with that stuff. The Morph is a lower price product, and by default, analog stuff is coming for it, but by default, it is a digital only scaler that just takes HDMI input and allows you to scale it up to 4K with these types of options. Mm-hmm. And both of them are great for that kind of stuff. So if you're just worried about like, hey, I want to make my PS3, Switch, whatever look good, the Morph would get you there for less, because products like these are basically the only 2 products on the market that actually do this. Like no other scalers actually give you this super clean kind of perfect scaling option.
They're always touching it up in some way.
Like nobody made devices like this before for some reason. They just didn't. They didn't exist, and now they do. And it's from like the smaller community that made it happen, which is awesome. So that's what I do for hardware stuff. And yeah, I mostly play retro games on my CRTs, but when I capture, I use the RetroTink 4K to get all my retro capture, because you can actually get like a pristine output that's actually like close to like an ultra sharp emulator. Basically, you can take your analog output and make it look like an emulator in terms of clarity, or you can layer on all kinds of cool filters and masks and make it look more authentic, like CRT simulation.
You know somebody's a nerd when they want the game to look slightly worse.
It doesn't make it look worse, though. That's the thing.
Come on, Jack. Come on.
No, because a lot of the art was made for lower res screens, right?
True.
And when you just blow it up with those sharp pixels, it actually reveals the flaws, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of the issue.
Yeah. No, I get that. I've been messing around with what's the 360 one? Xenia. Yeah. And I was doing Red Dead 1, and I was playing on the Legion, and I was just sitting there going, man, for a game that's feels like it's 100 years old, god damn, that game looks good, man. Oh, good.
That's actually rare too. That generation is rough. There's a lot of bad looking games.
A lot of blue and yellow, a lot of browns, lots of browns,
lots of they did. That was the era where before that, in like the PS2, Xbox era, and PCs, a lot of games used, and this was kind of thanks to Quake, they used pre-calculated light maps like baked into the textures. So they would actually simulate like radiosity and like indirect lighting and stuff just in a texture. It was not dynamic, but it looked very pleasing.
Right.
And then you get to this generation, it's like, oh, okay, we want to do real-time lighting all the time, which noble pursuit. But you can't do things like that in real time yet. And like light maps started to be used a bit less. And you just ended up with a lot of like very heavy contrasty, like super harsh shadows. Dark areas would basically be like very dark versus the lit and overly glossy normal mapped hell that you see in a lot of other games. But then sometimes you'd have stuff like Mirror's Edge that comes along where they did pre-calculate all the GI, and it looked amazing. And that's why. So
360 PS3 days will always be brown simulators to me, even though that's not true. But I remember getting multiple games and going like, "Whew, man, it just has a
everything
look
looks
to
like Bullet Witch."
Everything, it all looked the same, even though they weren't. That's honestly not trying to diss on the developers. Many did look different, but at their first glance, there was a familiar look to a lot of games. We're also asked. We've answered this a couple times, but I'm going to leave it up to John, who's the expert. He can talk a little bit more about this. You guys know I love this developer since day one. Lossless scaling. Death.ego says, how in the hell does lossless scaling work? Devs work on their game and work so hard to optimize the hell out of it. Then this wizard just comes along and says, yeah, just open the software and we can double or triple your frame rate. By the way, that's not actually exactly true. But John, what are your... If I said you got a couple minutes, how does lossless frame work overall?
I mean, think about it like this. For more than a decade, we've had TVs feature motion interpolation, and it's largely been demonized by the movie community, industry, right? Yeah. And I get that, because it doesn't look right. It's not the intended effect. But what it's actually doing technically is very cool conceptually. The idea is it's basically taking data from one frame and creating another frame just based on what happened in that prior frame, which is pretty nuts. But that has a limitation. And the limitation there is that you only have what that frame produces. You don't have any other information. So the way stuff like DLSS3 frame generation and all that works is that it actually ties into the game engine, so it has access to things like motion vectors, and it basically knows what's going to happen in the direction of motion. It has information about the game, the 3D scene. It's able to create these frames. Lossless scaling is much more flawed compared to that, but it's basically like an advanced version of what TV motion interpolation does. You're feeding it it's like a spatial kind of thing where it has this frame data, it's taking that in, and it's able to create more virtualized frames from it. But because it doesn't have actual access to what the game is doing internally, that's why you get more errors in the visuals. And like I think Alex showed that in his video, where you'll see things kind of break down and get weird, especially with like HUD stuff and 2D things. When you got moving text around and something where it's like the algorithm can't really know what's going to happen on the next frame because it's just an unusual thing. So that's why lossless scaling has those flaws. But what it does better than TV motion interpolation is that it's really darn fast. It can do it without massively impacting input latency. So even though it's a little bit flawed and it doesn't work great in every situation, it works well enough, and unlike TV interpolation, it still feels responsive when you use it. And that's kind of the key difference there, is that it's actually usable in a game.
Dude, I love it for the Legion. I've got it on the Legion, and it has been like, for some games, it has been a huge bonus. Like, it is, I think it's awesome for $5. People should support.
I also
this
think
man.
It's so cool on a low-powered device that can support it, and one that has a small screen, because those artifacts
you
are
can
a
get
lot less
away
obvious.
with a lot.
You can get away with a lot more.
Yeah, small screen's awesome in that way. Like, even the larger screen of the Legion, like, if I look really close, I might notice something, but overall, it just doesn't.
It's worth it.
It is absolutely worth it. Yeah. Next up, Skylarka says, "Hey everybody, I got a question for the entire panel." Now, we'll generalize this because these are hard to do. What are your 2 top games of all time? So we can just say what's in your brain, because these are always hard, at least for me. Mine change all the time, depending on my attitude any one day. But are there any 2 games that come up for you guys pretty generically, regularly, whenever you're talking about top-tier games? Like, top tier.
Okay, I mean, I could give a couple just off the top of my head. One is Doom.
2016 or Doom?
No.
Okay.
Doom 93. And I think Doom is one of those, it's like the forever game, in the sense that it has led to so much. It has so massively influenced the industry and created, it's given so much back. And yet it is always fun. Like, you can always play more Doom. There's always more content being made. There's so much creativity and vibrancy around it that it's hard to deny that I think Doom is just like, it's a monumental achievement that we continue to feel its effects now, which is nuts. And Quake is close to that in many ways, but because Doom came first, I kind of have to tip the hat to Doom. I mean, just like, I was addicted last fall to replaying all the Doom main campaigns on the Quest 3 headset and in VR, thanks to Team Beef's VR ports.
Yeah, VR ports.
And I can't believe how freaking good it felt. It was like reliving it again. And you're just like, it always feels like Doom just keeps coming back, and you just want to play more Doom, and I can't get enough of it. But next to that, though, I would have to put something very different. I might put like Sonic Mania up there.
Wasn't expecting that one.
Because I think that's one of the best platform games ever made. I love the Sonic games, the original 16-bit, and I think Mania is the best one that was ever made. And it's so good that I can play that anytime, and I play it multiple times a year. The only one close to that would be Super Mario World.
Sorry, was Mania Genesis?
Sonic Mania, no. That was the one made by Christian Whitehead and his team back in like 2017.
Okay, because I was like, I didn't play that. I haven't played it. I don't think I played Mania.
That one is unbelievably good. I just playing it this week again for another video I'm doing, and man,
just feels good.
It's pure genius from that perspective. So there's others that I might put above those or in that same level, but that's just a quick off the top of my head.
What about you, Corey? Any like top, like any 2, even just one? What's like a game that you sort of remember as being one of the top tier titles for you?
Diablo 2. I would say Diablo 2,
Yeah.
Iron Man Hardcore Permadeath Ladder with Andrew in my apartment on Lancaster Street would be. I will always remember that. We had like all these terribly crappy computers in a pile, and we playing on multiple accounts simultaneously. To like, I don't know what we were doing, but like we were very deeply into the Diablo 2. That was a big one for me. I think that was like one of the first games that I really went like hard on as a young adult, where I was like, I'm gonna no life this thing. Like, it's all I'm gonna do. I'll always remember that one.
Weirdly enough, Corey, like that like Doom, that one comes back. I mean, every game is based on a Diablo. Every one is like harkens back in some way, or is compared to Diablo 2, even 3 and 4.
So many.
It just doesn't. It's like you can't escape. That game is the DNA in that game. I mean, has basically frameworked every other title.
Dude.
Even when the title says we're not going to be like Doom, you're literally stating that Doom is one of the reasons or one of the things that created the genesis of your game by saying you're not going to be like that or you're going to change something. It's Doom 2 was awesome.
When a game goes from being a game title to a tag on Steam.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
that is true.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about that.
Even Blizzard can't escape Diablo 2.
No.
Like Diablo 2, they just can't. They can't get away from that.
No, they can't. They never will because
They
they
never
all
will.
want it.
Yeah, they never will, I don't think. What about you, Andrew? Has there been any title that like sits with you?
I love these responses because it's Corey said it really early. Like what we're always chasing when we're making games is trying to get that feeling. And I think those are like feelings for all of us. Like we had these seminal games, like most of us were younger at some point, and there's a game that hits you so hard. There's I don't even know if anybody remembers what platform it was on, but there was a game called Tenchu Stealth Assassin. It was probably on like PlayStation 1.
It's PS1, yeah.
Yeah. For me, that game, I played it so many times. Was so obsessed with perfecting my score on all the levels. It was so insanely fun. It was like the ultimate ninja stealth game I have been seeking. Like a
Since that
modern modern successor to that game. And
oh man,
the closest thing I think has been I think they're Me's like Shadow Tactics.
Oh dude, Shadow Tactics. I
Like,
reviewed that, one of the greatest of whatever that genre. Dude, it's so sad they went out of business.
It's terrible.
They made
heartbreaking.
It is.
They were the best in that genre. There's nothing that could touch them.
They nailed it.
So fun.
And
so
Shadow
fun.
Tactics was fucking like pirates and ninjas, and you're like, why would that ever work? And it worked brilliantly, man.
So Tenchu for me was huge.
What about you, Johnny?
Yeah, it's funny that everybody's talking about, older games from their young years, because I think it makes sense. It's kind of like music, where the stuff you listen to when you're growing up also marks you a great deal, right?
Yeah.
And I remember some of those early games, like, you could say Age of Empires 2 marked me, a lot of those games. But I really think Warcraft 3 was probably the biggest, because the campaign was amazing, with Arthas and everything. I loved it. But it also had the springboard of the modded content. So, people would create all these maps, right?
Yeah.
The custom maps. And I spent so much time playing with friends with some of these custom maps. And out of there came Dota, which ended up being, pretty much my favorite game like style, which now is just MOBA, right? So it turned into Dota, it turned into League, it turned into a bunch of other games that did the same formula. And it was this one guy, Ice Frog was his nickname. And he created that. And that became this whole thing where now you have League, you have Dota, and they're all pretty much the same template, the same format. Yeah. And that game, I've played over 5,000 hours of Dota 2 over the years. It came out in 2012.
What
and
hero
I started playing them. Sorry?
Did you spam a particular hero?
Well, I don't play it any longer. I used to play a hero called
Good for you.
Invoker, which was this magician.
Oh, yeah. I know Dota very well.
Yeah, you had to, almost like play the keyboard or play the piano on your keyboard.
Quaswex, right?
Quaswex. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
You know the stuff.
I know
currently,
Dota, yeah. I also don't play, so.
Yeah, I've currently switched to League, which is a bit more along the lines of what I want for a game of that type. But yeah, I mean, I love that type of games, and I had to be very careful to play less over the years, because I definitely had a very obsessive phase with that, and it took over a bit.
If mine is probably Virtual Fighter 2, because like
dude,
you guys, it was beyond belief.
Yeah.
But here's an answer that I don't know if anybody will get. It probably caused me to go back and play Doom, and I had Doom on the 32X. I had Doom on everything. But there was a game that got me into the Doom style stuff, and that was Power Slave on the Sega Saturn. And it was an Egyptian, exhumed now, I think is.
I did multiple videos on that.
Power
DF
Slave
Retro on that.
is I remember going to a friend's house, and I wasn't a huge fan of the Doom style games. Power Slave, I was a big fan of Sega Saturn. We were doing Virtual Fighter 2, and he said, I got this Power Slave game, and I'd already seen some old magazines on it. And I turned it on, and I don't know what it might have been the Egyptian. It might have been that it was a different, not edgy, Avenged Sevenfold the game kind of look to it. And maybe it was because Stargate. I have no clue. But whatever it was, I remember, and it had little bits of colored lighting and some little tiny technical advantages. And I played the ever-living shit out of that game to the point of just like my brain had it on my mind. And I don't know what it was, because mechanically it's not necessarily better than the others. But Sega Saturn in particular, for me, I don't know what it was. Maybe it was because it wasn't as popular, but the Sega Saturn had huge titles for me. Massive.
Okay, it's one of my favorite consoles ever, for sure.
It's incredible. Go ahead.
Have you played the remastered version of Power Slave?
I own it. Haven't played it. No.
Dude, it's so good.
Is it good?
Nailed it.
I was a little nervous.
Good.
I decided to support them, but not play.
Absolutely nailed it.
Gotcha.
It's perfect. It's perfect.
Yeah, dude,
I recommend
high
it.
praise.
Yeah, I mean,
it's so good.
It's just one of those titles that you got, like, you remember forever for whatever
the thing
reason.
The thing about that game is that it's not really a Doom style game that much. It has elements of that, but it's actually kind of a proto Metroidvania style game.
True.
Like, it's kind of a prototype for what Metroid Prime would do years later.
Absolutely is that.
Where you're moving back and forth between levels, you're picking up things in one area, and then you have to go back and now you can get through this water area because you have this new power up, and it's like it progresses in that way. And doing that in a first person shooter at that time, like nobody had done that before.
And
it was
the
really
platforming worked. I think that's also first person platforming ain't great. Like, the honest truth is, I'm playing a couple games right now, and I'm like, I don't know if they've nailed this. Some companies nail it, but for the most part, first-person platforming is not great. And that one, versus even some games I love, just it felt good, man. I don't know. There's something about having that game, and maybe it was because it was an alternate to Doom and those kind of games. Maybe I liked the different. But yeah, the
vibe is cool as hell. Did you know that there's actually another version of Power Slave on the PC? That's a completely different game.
Exhumed? Or is
Exhumed is the European name.
That's the European name. Okay.
Yeah, but Power Slave, it exists on PC, and it's made with the build engine, the same as Duke 3D. Completely different game. Same developer, but totally different game. They made that first, I believe, and then they made the console game, and the console game is way better and very different.
And it's also like totally different textures and everything, right?
Dude,
like
it's 100% different. Like the levels, like everything about the progression. It's just a straightforward shooter on PC, whereas on consoles, it's like that big complex adventure. And even then, though, it came to PS1 and Saturn, and the Saturn version's actually the better version.
Yeah, dude, Sega Saturn was awesome. And then lastly, I just got to say this, for me, it's probably above those is Daggerfall. I think Daggerfall is what got me into tech as a whole. The way they put it together, the ideas they had. X-Engine. It blew my mind because I remember my friend was mad because I wouldn't leave his house because he had a PC and I didn't. And I was playing Daggerfall and he wanted to go to the movies. And I was like, you go without me. And because I'm just playing on your PC. Like, I just sat. I was like,
I understand.
I couldn't understand how that was done because I was accustomed to consoles. And at that time, the piece it was mind blowing what you could do in that game. Lastly, before we wrap all this up, I want to just is there anything positive, anything amazing in games? Any cool new stuff you guys have been watching, listening to? Music?
So I had a cool experience today that I really enjoyed. On Quest 3, the Meta Quest 3. The White Owl studio, Swery studio, like Deadly Premonition guy, they just released Death Game Hotel. And since we were talking about Discord, I randomly showed up in their Discord, and like they were just like, oh, hey, we can play with the developers.
Oh,
so it was a chance.
That's awesome.
So I go into this VR game, and it was a chance to play with a bunch of people from the development team in Swery, and it was literally just me and them, and we did it all in Japanese, and that was awesome. And it was like the first time just doing all of this like on a stream with these guys playing their game, and it was just an awesome kind of chill moment. And it also made me realize that game is cool as hell. Like it's basically a table game where like there's these chalices around the table, and you have to put your tiles in there, and the tiles have different power-ups and things that it can cause on the table. And if you overflow it, candle goes out in the middle. When the 3 candles go out, the death god shows up. And at that point, you have to wager a body part. And if you end up losing at that, you lose that body part. And you can wager left and right hand, your eyes, your ears, and your mouth. And the way the multiplayer works is when you're talking, so we were all talking with each other, and it uses the microphone on that, for instance, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you lose your mouth in a bet, the Grim Reaper comes out and slices your mouth off, and now when you talk, it just sounds like,
oh man,
like to them,
awesome.
Right? Or if you lose your eyes, the screen becomes like blurry and dark red, and you can barely see. Or if you lose your hands, you just have like bony nubs. So you're like kind of shoving the tiles around with your nubs. And I thought that was just a really fun, creative use of VR as like a way to play the game. Plus, there's all these like random items that you can just like bring out at any time. So like people were bringing out like dart guns and like just random weapons, and we were just like throwing stuff at each other, and people were just getting up from the table and knocking everyone's tiles over, and then they would like reset. It was just pure chaos, and I really enjoyed that experience. It was extremely funny and enjoyable. And it also has a single player mode with like a story kind of thing where you're kind of going through a hotel playing the death game. Against
how much is that?
Computer opponents. It's like I think it was like $17 or something.
I love the lower
17,
price
20.
on some VR games. Some.
Yeah, man. It was a delightful time. So if you've got a Quest 3 and you want to play something like that, and it's also especially for people that have motion sickness with VR, it's a good game because when you're in the lobby, you wander around using warping, and then when you're in the game, you're just sitting, right? So there's not like moving around, so you won't get motion sick. So, and the dev team was super nice. It was awesome chatting with them and kind of learning the ropes about how to play it. Everybody was really cool. We all drank our virtual beers and did a kampai. So it's good fun. It definitely works. The other one I want to recommend real quick is there's a game on Steam that I picked up during the Steam sale that I've been playing the heck out of called Mini Shoot Adventures. Have you heard of this?
Mm-mm. This is Quake, or is this the Quest as well? No. Okay.
No, this is 2D. This is a Steam game, overhead game. Imagine this combination. It is a dual stick shooter, but it's also Zelda. So you move around overworld, you're going to dungeons. Instead of Link, you're controlling a ship that shoots. All the enemy encounters are like kind of like little mini bullet hell challenges, but you're still doing Zelda, like Super NES level Zelda style dungeons. You're getting keys, opening doors, getting power-ups, solving puzzles, and then you conquer the dungeon and you move on. And it's so insane, like the concept that it works. It's like, holy shit. Like it's extremely fun. And it runs at 90 FPS on the Steam Deck OLED, which is nice. So it's a great game to play there as well. So Mini Shoot Adventures, check it out.
Damn, a Quest game as well. I didn't expect that to be
Quest
suggested.
game as well.
Andrew, Corey, do you guys have anything amazing that's come up? Any new shows, movies, music? Anything that you can suggest to watchers to go check out?
Oh, to them?
Yeah, to Andrew and to Corey.
Yeah.
He was looking down. I was like,
thinking about it. Oh, yeah. Hey, Corey, tell me.
Yeah, looking at Eternal Strands. That's a game coming out from some Dragon Age vets. Mike Laidlaw and some of his crew.
Yeah.
That looks pretty cool.
oh.
IGN covered that in a video. I think Travis was what who covered that. It looked really good.
Yeah, look. I love the art direction. I thought it looked really like stylish.
Mm-hmm.
But look cool. And I'm rooting for Yellow Brick Games, so keeping an eye on that one.
Anything from you, Andrew?
No, I got updates to do. I don't know.
You just working?
Yeah, like, just right now, just heads down.
Next patch.
I mean, it's summer and we're busy, and yeah, I don't know.
It's like that
I'm
scene in
listening to
Iron
you guys.
Man.
I'm learning.
It's like the only thing that matters is the next patch.
Yeah, that is true. What about you, Johnny? Anything?
Once Human came out, and so it's free to play, and it's a mix of survival and looter shooter, and you can play co-op with a bunch of friends if you want. I'm gonna be playing it with Reg, a mutual friend, and Yeah, it looks to be like a good time for co-op. So
is that the
It's a
one you
good
guys
one.
played and streamed a little bit?
yeah,
Hopefully they patched that up because it had a lot of bugs when you guys played.
Yeah,
I
it-
believe you guys were.
it has some rough edges for sure. But yeah.
From me, I would say nothing for video games. I'm covering some. You'll see the reviews starting back up next week. Finally back onto reviews. It's been a sort of a weird dead month. I'm fine with that. Well, I mean,
It
I'm
has
not
been
fine
dead.
with it financially, but I'm fine with it when it comes to like a little bit of time to relax and reset. Put in 200 hours on Watch Dogs Legion for maybe because I hate myself. I don't know. I was enjoying it. But I will say, if you get a chance, you like science, Kyle Hill, he's a YouTuber, science YouTuber. He's one of the best, hilarious science YouTuber. If you get a chance, check his channel out. He's always got fun videos. Lately, I've been watching the hell out of him. And lastly, we'll end this with a super chat. Sadarth Nayak, I think I got that right. 449 numbers. I can't remember, Johnny. We always try to question how much.
This one is from India, so
India.
it's
Rupees.
Rubles
Rubles?
or
Rubles?
no rupee. Shit.
it's
One of the two
along
starts with
those
an R.
lines.
We're close.
It's one of them. I feel bad.
He says, hi from
No.
India. I want to know your thoughts on always online games and game preservation. Just like the crew, will always, the online game will be unplayable. I think we've covered this a lot. I mean, I don't know anybody here who wants a game to go away.
Yeah.
I think that there has to be, Internet Archive got hit recently because let's be honest, some of the stuff they do is questionable, but I like the idea of a place that captures everything,
Yep.
so that a game is available in some way. But I'll just end my part in the podcast and say what I want is every game dev who's making any kind of online only game has got to day one have a plan for when it goes offline, private server package ready to put online, and just be like, all right,
Offline mode.
offline mode.
Man.
Yes.
Here it is. Go ahead, Corey.
One studio I really like, 10 Chambers. They make a game called GTFO.
Oh
And
yeah.
it was very heavily live service. Like there was episodes and seasons, and they changed out the whole map. The entire game was getting
Yeah.
swapped out. But when they finished their live service execution, they rolled out a new game mode that has all of the seasons available. You can play it in any order. You can play it single player. You can play it like.
Oh yeah.
I thought that was a really good move by the developer, where they're like, we're moving on, but we know that you guys love this game, so we're going to give you everything that we've done over the last 5 years in a neat, accessible package. Enjoy. I thought that was a great way to end the live service process. Maybe you can't afford to do those type of expansions anymore, but you don't have to leave the players, out in the cold.
Yeah, like Battleborn. I'm always going to hold
Yeah.
Battleborn in
No,
particular as like something,
And
because I
that
actually
was
sort of
the
enjoyed
very
that game.
first hero shooter.
They
They
one of the
came up with
first.
the term like hero shooter.
Yeah,
it was a
makes me
big thing.
mad.
Yeah, it's
As we wrap this up, Cyber Knights, go check out. I'll put a post in our YouTube chat where you can go and you can wish list their game. Is there anything you guys want to say? Anything coming up with Cyber Knights? Anything that you guys have planned? Any new data? Any information you guys want to pimp out about the game coming out here?
So yeah, sure. Our next big thing, we just put out a huge update that's a crafting system, like the 3D printers of the cyberpunk future. You can make all sorts of crazy and exciting combinations of weapons and armor. Really, really fun. People are in it deep right now. That was out last week. I think in about a week, we're going to roll out an all-new system called Headhunters. So this allows power players in New Boston to hire famous bounty hunters to come after you. So maybe this is like an extra cool wrinkle that will join the game.
Awesome.
When you're on a mission, maybe headhunters, if you'll know that they're on your trail, but like they can show up in the middle of a map and try to kill you. Like you're trying to hack this server in a back room, and they show up somewhere, and you got to hack the server double fast because the headhunter crew is after you. So we're like halfway. We're rolling out big features all the time. We're hoping to, development wise, we're on track to be done this year. So we're like roughly a little more than halfway through early access. We have probably another 100 updates to go to polish this thing till it shines and have all the content that we really want in there. So either way, as we talked about earlier in the podcast, like hit us with a wish list if you don't want to get in right now. If you want to be, real close to the fire and in the forge with us, join right up and hit some F10s and see us in Discord. So
some F10s.
F10s.
Yeah. Send them Crash. Anything from you, Corey, that you want to add for that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited about Headhunters. It adds a weird wrinkle. It's an AI challenge because the Headhunters aren't on the team of any of the other AI, so they're like a whole nother team that can fight the other enemies. So it, like Andrew said, it's a wrinkle, but it throws this weird chaos of like, I'm just going to extract, we're going to go over here, and then now there's Headhunters starting a firefight with somebody on the other side. And you're like, maybe I do have time for those loot boxes because the guards seem distracted. So it adds this level of chaos to some of the missions that's really fun. So I'm looking forward to getting that out.
Yeah, everybody, if you get a chance, at the very least, wish list, check out this. Like I said, I can vouch for the prior games. Seems like everybody's loving this as well. I may end up jumping into this now, hearing about Headhunters and stuff, because I like that kind of... I like the Trinity. I like when something unbalances stuff. So the idea of, like, jumping in and having somebody show up randomly. So I don't know why, but I always like that, where it's like that little bit of chaos factor introduced. I want to thank these guys for showing up. Again, makers of some of my favorite games. I mean, I've been talking about them a while and will continue to. I appreciate these guys taking the time out of their day. So at the very least, you guys can go to that link, take some time out of your day, hit the wish list. That'll be it for us. Other than Johnny, what are you streaming tomorrow?
I'm streaming some League of Legends tomorrow.
Oh my God!
That's it. That's the day. We do that. But also, I had a crack at making a kind of review for Elden Ring DLC. So I had a crack. Take a look at it. It's on my channel. Kind of getting
Johnny
into the
plays
details. Live. Talking about Johnny plays live on YouTube. I also stream on Twitch. So if you want to stop by,
and John,
I'll be there
anything
tomorrow.
from you before we wrap it up?
I think in the next week or so, actually, I just finished a video on. So this is an older game now. Penny's Big Breakaway came out earlier this year from the Sonic Mania team, right? But they went nuts with how they made it. They like architected everything from the ground up, their own tools, basically resolved the 3D problem for themselves. They even used a programming language that had never been used in a shipping game before, called the Beef programming language. They did some cool stuff, and I did a gigantic behind-the-scenes video where they basically shared everything with me, and it's about an hour long and should go live this week. And really, if you really want to see some in-depth shit and hear from these guys about how they basically made this crazy thing from the ground up, and why they also did this like procedural stuff where like they're able to tweak the level and build all the shapes out right up into the end because they just click a button, run it through their server, and like it puts in all the details according to rules and metadata. It's like you paint the surfaces and it just fills in all the edges and the tiles and makes everything look real pretty, all programmatically. And it's cool stuff, and it turned out great. To watch for that video.
Okay. Next week, check that out. Thank you again, everybody watching. Peace out and enjoy the rest of your week.